Almost, hold on.
All right.
I can't get my leg under the table.
I'm not in a hurry. It's all evening.
I was trying that last week.
This conference will now be recorded.
This habit, I have this bouncy habit. I started to put a lot there.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I have the,
Say who's on. Does it say who's on in here? No.
What's that?
It usually says who's online.
Oh, up here in the top normally.
Yeah, somewhere
that's
up
what
Well, she may not have opened it yet. Here it is to the right. See it?
there.
my
Yeah, there you go.
be like this, her foot all the time.
All
and
kinds
it's
of
like,
things.
she gets that from you.
There we go.
Oh, yeah. Especially when they're sitting in the back seat kicking.
Okay, we are ready when you are.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like you to rise and join me in pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening to the April 5th meeting, and I'd like to have roll call, please.
Councilmember Bellinger,
Here.
Councilmember Kremick,
Here.
Councilmember Swift,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Legero,
Here.
and Mayor Alves.
Here. All right, I believe we have a presentation we're supposed to start off the evening with, am I right?
Correct.
That's one for one. Okay. Do we have someone this evening here ready to receive the Sexual Assault Awareness Month proclamation?
I wasn't made aware of anybody attending tonight. They may be online.
Do we want to check? If that's the case, can I forego the reading?
Okay. I saw some chat, so I wanted to make sure.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Is audio on?
it is now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can take that.
would you please? Thank you. I don't see the point in doing that. All right. And it looks like we're gonna go right to the consent calendar. These items are considered routine in nature and are acted upon by a single action unless requested by an individual council member or members of the public for special consideration.
Yeah, Mayor Alves, regarding item number 2, I will be abstaining on voting on check numbers 9777 and 75038.
Very good. I'll accept the motion for the balance.
In regards to item 3, I had a question. Is this the issue with the cell phone?
No, this is a different claim.
I would like to talk about that claim.
Okay.
So you want to pull number
So
3?
I'll pull item 3.
3 is pulled, and I believe 1 was pulled. No, just 3.
Just 3.
Just 3.
Okay, good. I'll accept that motion for the balance, please.
Move to approve.
Seconded.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. And we're gonna go back to number 3, is it?
Yes.
Let's do it.
I would just like to hear a little bit of the details about that.
Again, it's just a claim that was filed upon the city, and based on the recommendation from our Risk Management Association, there is no liability on the city's behalf, so we are rejecting the claim.
What was the claim?
It's a claim regarding an incident while the police department was serving a search warrant.
Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
there was a claim for damages, but their police department has immunity when they have a valid search warrant.
Okay, and the risk management has investigated it and rejected it.
Correct.
And that's the recommendation of staff. Okay, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Are you good?
I'm good with that.
I'll accept the motion.
Move to accept item number 3 on the consent calendar.
I'll accept the second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, let's see what's next here.
Staff communications.
Thank you. Staff communications.
So included in your report tonight was the wastewater treatment plant report for February. It's a little behind because of, we were having some computer issues at the wastewater treatment plant, so the operator wasn't able to get it to me. But staff has a few other staff communications. Just to let the council know, on March 27th, we did hold our second dose vaccination clinic. And there were 295 doses. It was a very busy day. They were a little short-staffed, so it was. What did I say? I think I did 23,000 steps that day. So it was a busy day, but all went fairly well. We are anticipating, I know last meeting I said this, and so I hope I don't jinx us, but we are anticipating to go to the red tier again tomorrow when they release numbers from the state there. We qualified last week for red tier, so we're hoping, and it was looking, according to the county health department, that we should be there again. So hopefully we will get into that red tier on, it officially would be effective on Wednesday. Recreation, baseball, softball has signed up, 310 kids, which is down from previously 433. Soccer registration is open, and we did open up for lifeguard applications. We actually have 17 lifeguard applications. This is the most that we've had in years. Not for lifeguards, for the swimming.
The pool's opening?
The pool will be opening for swim lessons. We don't know that we can do public swim at this time. So it will at least be open for swim lessons. Not all of those applications have training, so they still would have to get certified to be qualified, but it's, you know, there are a few classes out there that have opened up for the training, so we've been trying to let them know when they are to get them in there. But that was a positive note there to get that many applications. So in regards to our NG projects, I just wanted to update you. Solar, the ball field lights, and the water meter projects will all be starting in mid-April to beginning of May. They're expecting that the ball field stadium lights should be done first part of May. And it should not interfere with any of our baseball practices or games. And that's all I have. I don't know if any of the other managers have anything to add.
You said the water meters were going in the next month or so?
Mid-April,
Okay.
yeah, mid-April to late April they will start. Anticipation is that it will take like 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
Going back to the actual item number 4, the wastewater treatment plant's report for February, there's just nothing to report?
Oh, no, it was in your staff, it was in your packet.
Can we go over the major components of that? How's it going out there?
So we're in off industrial season right now, so we're actually prepping for industrial season, so everything is running smoothly out there at this time. Nothing, we are in the process right now of replacing our flow meter for the industrial side, since it is off season, but other than that, there's no issues down there.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so let's move on to, this looks like let's see, matters presented from the audience. The public may address the city council on any item that is on the agenda at the time the item is called. The public may also address the city council for any item not on the agenda that's within the authority of the city council. Each speaker is limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Unused time may not be yielded to another speaker. The determination of whether an item is within the authority of the city council is a discretionary decision made by the mayor. Is there anyone this evening who would like to speak on anything? Now, this is not the water debate, okay. So if you have another issue, you're more than welcome to speak.
Martin Van Houten, 480 First Street. And last Saturday, which was April 3rd, I think, a little bit before 10 o'clock, I was heading down to the car wash, and the sprinklers were on at the corner, the southeast corner of McHenry and Highway 120. And it looked like the valve had been stuck on, and it had been stuck on for quite a while, because the planters were really flooded and water was just flowing down to the drain. And so I called Tammy and left a message, and I tried to call Robert, but I had the wrong number. And I don't know if Robert takes care of that area or not anyway, but and when I came back, passed through again about 45 minutes later, the water was still on and still running. And so then I called dispatch, police, and then they, I think, got a hold of whoever's on call. But I think I left a message for Tammy, and I think Tammy had already called whoever was on call also.
Correct.
But since that time, I had an epiphany. As the chief of police is a former public works guy. And so if he could train his officers to just show them where the backflow preventers are, if anything like that happens again, all they need to do is shut the backflow preventer off, and they would kill the system. And that'd be a great job for Mr. Lackey. A good training program.
Yeah, he's got nothing
Supplying the
better.
tools?
Huh?
Are you supplying the tools?
All it takes is a key to take the padlock off and a handle or a quarter turn on the valve to shut it off. That-
Hold on, I'll get with Justin and find out
yeah.
where all that.
I don't know that we want our police officers dedicated to doing public works jobs.
Well,
He's talking about an emergency.
Sure.
this is an emergency, and I'm actually kind of surprised that the police officers didn't notice the water running long before that already. But
They may have noticed, but probably didn't know what to do. And I think your point being that if they did know what to do, and in case of emergency, it might make sense. I don't disagree. But I agree with Tammy, it's not their job full-time. But in an emergency, I agree with you. I think it makes sense.
yeah,
We're all in the same game together here.
Yeah.
We should all try to help each other any chance we can.
yeah, try and save water.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Good point.
well, that's it.
Thank you. I don't disagree with that premise, actually.
I'll show you later how to.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come up and speak about anything that's not related to this evening's agenda? Is there anyone online that would like to speak on behalf of something that's not on the agenda? Oh, we have somebody coming now. Very good.
Hi, Mr. House. My name is Doug Smezrud. I live on Coley and Jerry.
Okay.
And I was wondering what's going to happen. I was trying to see if I could get a hold of the Public Works Department, see if the manager knew what kind of, because I sent you an email before having to do with the speed going through there.
Where was this at?
This is Coley and Jerry. Coley Avenue.
Yeah.
It's getting really, really bad.
Okay.
And it's getting to the point where there's a bunch of kids that are racing down that street, and they're going about 45, 50 miles an hour. And I wrote several emails, and I just never did find out if there was anything going to be done as far as speed bumps or even a couple of stop signs on jail there, so people just don't go hightailing it.
This
through
is
there.
becoming more of a problem. You're not the only ones who's reached out for some resolve in this thing. I've had another gentleman call me. I think, what the heck road is that on? It's next to the park on the far side by Dent there. What's that? Mission.
Mission Street, yeah.
I guess Mission's got some kind of
Lion.
issue going on by the park there too. So, we had one other situation, I think, that we had to deal with similar to what you're describing. And I think Public Works put in a speed bump. And my understanding that it worked pretty well. I don't know for sure. Staff, any feedback on that?
It's been running fairly smooth. We haven't had any complaints. I haven't had to maintenance the speed hump. You're gonna get the kids that enjoy going over fast, but it has seemed to help out quite a bit.
Chief, any feedback on your behalf?
For the,
Speed bump.
on Mission,
Yes, sir.
the only complaint we got is when it wasn't long enough at some point. They wanted it longer because there was a car parked adjacent to the speed bump, parallel to the curb, which forced them to have to go over the speed bump, but when that car's not there, they try to go around it.
Oh, interesting.
That was the only complaint we had.
Okay. So I don't know, I can't promise you anything. I will hope that staff will take something down on paper and get your address and and maybe the chief and the staff can get together and take a look at it and come back with some sort of recommendation.
Yeah, I know they're gonna be, very soon, they're gonna be tearing up the street, I guess, putting new, sewage lines or
Well, that'll slow
whatever
them
you
down
guys
for
are
a
planning
while.
on doing, water lines. And, they're gonna repave it anyway, so it'd be a good time just to slam them things in and, you know, it's mostly the people who live in that apartment complex and
Okay.
close to that apartment complex.
Well,
They're just young kids and they don't pay attention, they just speed through there.
Again, the staff has probably made note of it, I'm sure. If nothing, or no one reaches back out to you in a couple weeks,
Okay?
feel free to contact me, and I'll see what I can tell you that's been going on.
Okay,
Is that
thank you.
fair?
That's fair.
Thank you for your time. All right. Okay, where's that leave us? Oh, we're back to, does anyone else like to speak on the consent calendar? Online, anyone? Okay, I think we're gonna move beyond this now.
Mayor, I have a comment on the police issue.
Sure.
I had the privilege of doing a ride-along. I try to do one of these once a year. I really enjoy them. Get to connect with the officers, get to actually ride in the patrol car, see what their job entails. We went out on a Friday night, and I'm just telling you, it was a great experience. And I think everybody in town should really appreciate the job these officers do. You know, the job, like the gentleman said about the sprinklers, from my perspective, you know, when the officers go out, we're looking for real things that can harm this community, and we're trying to stop them. I'm going to give one example. You know, we saw an individual that was potentially going to enter the grounds of El Pertel Middle School. And this is a huge problem, right? Because if this guy goes in there, that's where our kids go. And this officer, I didn't see it. This officer did. He was trained.
Excuse me, Councilmember Crummich, maybe this is best saved for Councilmember, for the
Vacations.
comments at the end, for Councilmember comments, because we're still in public comment at this
Sure.
point. And we
I
can't
can
have-
hold it off till then. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, and thank you. All right, so, doesn't look to me like there's any more input. If there is, your last chance is now. And I don't hear any input. So we're gonna move on to a public hearing to consider the following. An appeal of planning commission decision on a variance application 21-741-1528 Roosevelt Avenue. Staff.
Thank you, Mayor. A little background and overview. The applicant filed an appeal December 3rd, 2020 on the city planner's decision regarding the enforcement of setback requirements for the non-residential commercial zoning district on fences, hedges, walls, etc. This appeal was presented by staff and reviewed by the Planning Commission at their January 12th, 2021 meeting. Attached is Exhibit A, is that meeting information and agenda. Upon Commission's review of the item, it was the consensus of the Commission to deny the appeal. The Planning Commission's decision began a 10-business-day appeal period in which the Commission's actions could be appealed to the City Council. The applicant did not file an appeal and instead filed a variance application in that time period, which was then scheduled for the Planning Commission's March meeting date. At the March 9th, 2021 meeting, the Planning Commission was presented the applicant's variance application attached as Exhibit B. Upon review of this item, it was the consensus of the Planning Commission to deny the applicant's variance request for reduced setbacks on a chain-link metal fence already installed at the applicant's property. The Planning Commission's decision began another 10-business-day appeal period in which the applicant submitted a request to appeal the actions of the Planning Commission to City Council for further review. There continues to be an active demand to cease and desist fence installation on this property, which was issued back in October of 2020. The letter was issued when the applicant added an additional fence post on Roosevelt Avenue after city staff met with the applicant and contractor identifying the setbacks for the fence along the roadways. After issuing the letter, staff met on site with the applicants to confirm the setbacks. At this meeting, the applicant was told they could finish the fence with the exception of the area being questioned on the setback. After this meeting, there were additional fence posts installed on First Street, which encroach into the 15-foot setback. Code enforcement actions remain paused on these activities as they were originally dependent on the outcome of the first appeal hearing back in January 2021, then the variance application in March, and are now pending City Council's actions on this appeal. In the applicant's most recently submitted letter dated March 29, 2021, attached as Exhibit C, the applicant revisits and summarizes their understanding of the city's efforts to enforce the Escalon Municipal Code, which restates the applicant's opinion that the setback regulations enforced were improper and/or misinterpreted by staff. However, this argument, in which they filed their original appeal on in December of 2020, was already denied and the appeal period on this decision closed. The city's staff report on this claim, which is also Exhibit A, provided a detailed response disagreeing with the applicant's stance, which ultimately prevailed over the applicant's argument on this item. Regarding the applicant's variance application attached as Exhibit B, that was reviewed by the Planning Commission in March, the main argument provided for a variance being a reasonable request, therefore should be approved, was pointing attention to the surrounding existing properties and ultimately claiming that because those properties do not meet current municipal code requirements, that the applicant should not have to meet them either. Staff continues to advise that surrounding properties are either existing prior to city incorporation, existing under previous code requirements, non-conforming status, or went through a site development approval process in which their fence placement was approved as a part of their development project. If and when those properties move forward with new construction, redevelopment, or development, the current municipal code requirements will be applied to those properties. Staff also continues to remain dedicated to enforcing the current municipal code requirements because staff is diligent in treating citizens the same. These same requirements are enforced throughout the city when applicable. The property in question is also in an area of substantial redevelopment in which it will become home to at least a dozen new businesses, including a wine tasting venue, a photography studio, and possibly a new restaurant. Staff believes the city has an obligation to ensure the fencing in the area meets the municipal code requirements, as it may be located there indefinitely if the applicant continues to keep the property vacant. The city also has a future beautification project identified in this area along First Street. As explained in Escalon Municipal Code 17.57010, variances are intended to resolve practical difficulties or unusual physical hardships that may result from the size, shape, dimension of a site or the location of existing structures thereon, from geographic, topographic, or other physical conditions on the site or in the immediate vicinity, or from street locations or traffic conditions in the immediate vicinity of the site, or from street application of this title will deprive such property of privileges enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity under the identical zoning classification. This section of the municipal code further states that such a variance shall be subject to conditions as will assure that the adjustment thereby authorized shall not constitute the grant of a special privilege, inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties in the vicinity and zone in which the property is situated. Upon application in proper form, such variances may be granted as will not be contrary to the general purpose of this title or the public interest. The Planning Commission found that the variance application could not meet the required findings for a variance per Escalon Municipal Code 17.57030 shown below, and therefore had to deny the variance application. A, that there were special circumstances applicable to the subject property or to the intended case which do not generally apply to other property in the same vicinity and under identical zone classifications. B, that the special circumstances relate to the property or use, not the financial or other personal condition of the applicant, nor to any self-imposed condition on the property that is the result of actions taken by the present owner or its predecessor. Letter C, that the granting of a variance shall not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitations upon other property in the vicinity and same zone classification. And letter D, that the result would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to properties or improvements in the vicinity. A summary of staff's analysis presented to the Planning Commission at the March meeting was that the applicant provided the same reasoning for each of the findings required for the variance, that all the properties around them are not subject to the requirements, so their property should not be subjected to the requirements either. However, all of those surrounding properties went through a development process at some time and are either constructed prior to city incorporation, non-conforming, or existing. Future development of those properties will again trigger current municipal code requirements and will be applied to their improvements. The city, including the city engineer, also did not agree with the applicant's comparison of building setbacks to the fencing setbacks. As previously explained, the commercial zoning district has no setback requirements for buildings. Building setbacks also have a smaller footprint and are not continuous along a road of, right-of-way as a fence would be. Therefore, applicant's arguments for those findings A through C were not relative. More detailed analysis can be found in Exhibit B, which was the Planning Commission's meeting. So the action by the City Council. Pursuant to Municipal Code 17.59010, any person disagreeing with the decision made by the city planner or the Planning Commission involving the application of this title may appeal the decision to the Planning Commission or City Council as appropriate. Applicant has timely requested this appeal and paid the appropriate fee. Pursuant to Municipal Code 17.59090, the City Council shall hear and decide appeals from any action of the Planning Commission and may affirm or reverse the action in whole or in part. The City Council shall not be limited in its review of that portion of the action complained of, but may consider the entire matter, and in doing so, may add, modify, or delete conditions as it deems necessary or proper. In accordance with Escalon Municipal Code 17.59130, a public hearing notice appeared in the Escalon Times on March 31st, 2020, and on March 25th, 2021, a notice of public hearing was mailed to every property owner and occupant within 300 feet of the subject site, as noted on the latest assessor's record. Staff did receive one response regarding this appeal. We did provide you a copy. I do have extra copies as well. And I'm not sure if the council would want me to read it into the record or if having a copy is fine.
Copy. Gentlemen, any objections, just a copy?
That's fine.
We're
Copy's
good, thank
fine.
you.
Copy's
Okay.
fine.
So the exhibits as described throughout the staff report was the Planning Commission staff report and related documents from January 12th meeting, the staff report from the March 9th meeting. There was a letter of opposition also submitted for the March 9th meeting at the Planning Commission letter that is included as Exhibit C. Exhibit D is the applicant's appeal request dated from March 11th, and then they also submitted a supportive appeal letter, which was dated March 29th. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them or staff. And then we do have Ms. Coleman available in the audience, as well as her legal counsel, Mr. Dickerson.
Okay, let's
Mayor
start
Alves,
off.
can I start this?
You go right ahead.
Thank you. So I appreciate both parties being here for this. I've done quite a bit of work on making myself aware of the situation, and I do have a little document prepared that I would like to go through right now. So first of all, I love variance requests. I really do. I love the fact that our citizens can challenge not only once, but twice the current code and regulations. What I don't love, and this is a little bit of a side note, is the price that this costs. A variance is currently $1,150, and that is $827 for the variance request and then a $323 environmental fee. That's the first request to go before the Planning Commission. The second request, if that's denied, to go before the City Council is $645. We're talking about a large sum of money to challenge the city regulation and the city code before the city government, and I think that's a problem. I think those costs are far too high. I think these costs are unjust. I think they're unfair. Regardless of what the studies have shown, these costs are detrimental to our legislative, judicial, and executive process. They inhibit citizens from achieving the freedom that our very Constitution demands and grants. And I quote, America's founders understood clearly that private property is the foundation not only of prosperity, but of freedom itself. Thus, through common law, state law, and the Constitution, they protect private property rights. The rights of people, and this is important, to acquire, use, and dispose of property freely. With the growth of modern government, however, those rights have been seriously compromised. That's from the Cato Institute. Tonight we have before us a rather small matter of offense. The issue is whether the fence is where the fence is located. Is it this far, or is it that far from where a future sidewalk may be placed? But in reality, it is so much more than that. It is a challenge to the growth of modern government and its ever-reaching grasp into our private lives. Clearly, my position on this matter is most likely already revealed. However, my intention tonight is not to appeal to my fellow councilmen's principles, but rather to our staff's research and findings. We rely heavily on this information to make our decisions. So I submit to you the following. I watched the entire Planning Commission meeting, which was over 3 hours long, on March 9th, 2021. If you go back and watch the tape, at minute 17, 14 seconds, this was the staff analysis, and I quote, "The city does not foresee that the variance would be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to properties or improvements in the vicinity." Let me read that again. At minute 17, 14 seconds, staff analysis was, "The city does not foresee that the variance would be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to properties or improvements in the vicinity." At minute 19, "The city, including the city engineer, does not agree with the applicant's comparison of building setbacks to fence setbacks." My question is, why not? Buildings have a 0-foot setback and fences have a 15-foot setback. Just imagine a long building along a sidewalk. I think that would be about the same as a fence, if not more detrimental. At minute 19, 15 seconds, "Buildings also have a smaller footprint. I don't understand how a building has a smaller footprint than a fence. In my mind, a footprint is the total area that something takes up." Minute 19, 20 seconds. "The city finds that the applicant's findings of A through C are not relevant." Well, they are relevant to the applicant. They are relevant to the property owner who is trying to exercise their property rights. Minute 19, 22 seconds. "Public outreach." This is important. We sent out notices within 300 feet. There was no response, except one. Chandler Enterprises. Finally, at minute 21, 10 seconds, a mere 3 minutes and 56 seconds after the staff analysis revealed that they do not foresee any issues with the variance, they recommended that the Planning Commission deny the variance. They didn't find any issues with the variance request, but they recommended that the Planning Commission deny the variance. Now, the Planning Commission meeting was very long, and most of it was filled with, comments and this and that. What we have here is a request for a variance that the city staff does not find to be a problem, and it will not cause any issues for anyone. We have a property owner trying to do the right thing. I looked at the fence. I went and looked at the fence. I think it looks great. What's constructed so far, I think it looks fine. And it is as far back as any neighboring property, fence, or building. Its construction won't jeopardize anyone, anything, or any future project. It will only miss on the precious code. Like I said in the beginning, I love variance requests because it shows that we still have freedom to go against what the government says. Let us never forget that the government works for the people, not the other way around. I would move that we grant the variance request based on staff's findings alone. And I will now appeal to my fellow council members' principles. If Mr. Grossi had come before us with a variance request for his fence, I would also have given it the same consideration and most likely voted to grant him approval. This is not about feelings. This is about private property, rights, and freedom. Thank you.
All right. How about Councilman Bell?
Did you have a comment?
Well, I just wanted to remind the council that there cannot be any, I heard a motion. It sounded like a motion was being
Said he
made.
would, if he, I don't think he made one, he just said he would if he was in the position to do so.
Perfect.
Isn't that what you said, basically? If you
Were
had.
were you actually making a motion at this time, or just suggesting that that's how you're going to vote if there was a motion? Or
Suggesting.
That's what I
okay.
thought.
Well, in that case, there's
Appreciate it.
actually no motion on the floor, so
Of course
please
not.
continue.
All right, thank you. Councilman Bellinger, would you like some input? Would you like to add some input? Yeah, some input, we just did that. Okay.
I'd like to hear from the property owner a little bit on the reasons why it needs to be where it's currently placed and not in agreement with our current code. It's a dirt lot. It is on the edge of town. I'm not debating that action. I just want to know, it's a dirt lot and you're wanting to get another 8 to 10 foot of fencing from where it's supposed to be with our current code, and you're just gonna get another 10 or 15 foot of dirt enclosed by the fence. And on the variance request, it was for security reasons, and I'd like to know how that applies to dirt for the application.
We can
You're looking
get
for
to that.
securing the property.
We'll get to that point, but let's move on and see
Asking that
what other
question.
input I can get. Councilmember Swift.
Yeah, I'm much in the same boat. I'd really like to hear the public hearing and get the input and find out what is the special circumstance.
Okay. Vice Mayor Jarrell.
I agree, it's an appeal, so I think the burden goes to the Coolmans to make their case to us and then get the input from them and go from there.
Okay, very good. I'm not gonna say anything. I'll reserve my comment till after we hear from them as well. At this point, is it proper to ask them to present their cases?
Oh, yes, Mayor.
Okay, then, who would
Public
like to come
hearing.
up, and speak first? Please do so. May I have your name and who you're, supporting?
My name is Brett Dickerson. I'm an attorney. I represent the Coolmans. I apologize. Every time I take this mask off, my hearing aids come out.
Yeah.
Am I the only person that happens to? I didn't think so. Anyway, thank you very, very much for allowing us to be here tonight. Councilman, I appreciate your words. I agree with virtually everything that you had to say. I don't really anticipate trying to flog this very much more, okay? Our position here has been very clear from the get-go. First, in response to your question, the fence that they put up is precisely where the code says it can go, notwithstanding the decision of the Planning Commission. It is precisely where it is supposed to go. We presented 3 code sections, a decision of the California Supreme Court supporting our position, why that was the case. The only thing the city provided us in their cease and desist letter was a aggressively edited section, citation to one of your code sections dealing with setbacks, so aggressively edited that it became virtually meaningless. We presented the entire code section showing that, in fact, setbacks are only required where there's a yard. We showed code sections that show both in terms of a picture and by way of text that you cannot have a front yard under your code without a building. Every yard is established in the context of a building. We have never received anything that contradicts that other than, well, that's just the way we've always done it. You got an empty lot, 2 acres, 3 acres, 4 acres, you got 500 feet of frontage, well, that whole 500 feet is a front yard. That makes no sense. It defies your own code, it defies common sense. They have never been able to answer a simple question in this regard. How do you have a front yard when you don't have a building for the yard to be in front of? They can't answer that. We get nothing but crickets. That's very frustrating. when the only answer you get is, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we always done it is not code enforcement. That is dictatorial. It is arbitrary and it is capricious, and that is no way to run a railroad, as they used to say. Especially when you have somebody here who's trying to read the code, trying to do exactly what it says, and then they turn around and they find out, well, code says this, but we're going to do B. Why? Because that's the way we've always done it. Okay? We also provided information concerning the fact that the code relating to setbacks deals specifically with required yards. The city has ignored the existence of that word. They've simply ignored it. They've treated it like it was advertisement in the middle of this. It meant nothing. Now, the code is admittedly extremely vague on what constitutes a required yard. That's something that needs to be fixed, obviously. But until such time as that is fixed, that ambiguity, that confusion rests with the city and should be interpreted against the city, as opposed to the people who are out here trying to exercise their property rights. But they didn't pay any attention to that. So not only do they not have a yard, they've misinterpreted their own regulations concerning what a yard is. Look in your code, the picture's there. It tells you what it looks like. They all got a picture, they all got a building in it. But they also misinterpreted what it means to have a required yard. So what ends up happening is you have the Kuhlmans being forced to put a setback that is so farther back from the street than any other property fronting Roosevelt or First that it's less than an anomaly. It's almost an aberration. And what we can't understand is, why is it that when you have this empty lot virtually at the end of Roosevelt Avenue, that you need to have a 15-foot setback to preserve the health and safety, morals, and well-being of the city of Escalon? It defies reason. And just so you know where your code is on this, we can leave those posts exactly where they are so long as we cut them down to 30 inches. Why? Why would you cut a fence down to 30 inches? That's the scheme that we're dealing with. You want to leave it where they are? Cut them to 30 inches, but if you want to raise it up to 6 feet, you got to move it back 15 feet. This makes absolutely no sense. And we have frankly been very confused and in many respects flabbergasted why the city has insisted putting on this full court press, never showing any quarter, never showing any consideration, never even listening to what we had to say or responding. When I said your interpretation's wrong, I got nothing back but crickets. But you're going to move that fence. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why? Now, she went out there. She needs security. She does need security. If you need, she'll come up and tell you about it. She had trucks moving along out there. Trucks would park on the property. Then somebody in the neighborhood would immediately call the police to tell on them. And the cops in the city would literally, not the police, but the city would literally show up practically before this person hung up the phone. Hey, you got to move that truck. I didn't put it there. You got to move it. Well, I guess we need to put up a fence. That started the whole battle as to whether or not your fencing code was right. They were wrong on that one, too. They ended up having to have an emergency meeting so they could rewrite your code relating to fences. So it said what they claimed it said. And this is another circumstance. This is all fixable. This is all so fixable. But these people should not be dragged through the mud. They should not be made out to be quasi-criminals. That cease and desist letter said, you don't move that fence, it's a misdemeanor. Fines and potential jail time for having a fence in the wrong place. That's what we've been dealing with here, folks. A variance is only there because we want to allow what they have in terms of a setback to be consistent with every single property fronting Roosevelt and First. That's why God made variances, so you can have consistency out there. And we've been routinely denied that. Routinely denied that. So I think under these circumstances, given, I don't even consider it the uncertainty as to what your code says about variances and such, setbacks. Code's clear. That fence is right where it's supposed to be. But under these circumstances, I think the decent thing to do, grant them the variance. It's a nice trade-off. That makes sense. That's all I have. I'm free to answer questions if you have any.
Gentlemen, are there any questions? There are no questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have a
Oh,
question.
excuse me, there's one.
So the variance, is it for the height or is it the location of the fence?
No, the location, we don't want to have a 30-inch high fence.
But you're not asking for a variance to the 30-inch requirement?
No, no, no. We want to be able to have the fence where it is and have it be 6 feet high so we don't have people encroaching onto the property, driving out there. Because we have had a problem with that, enough that we've had city personnel come out and get on us about it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a brief question now, actually, on that.
Yes, sir.
So I think we're bouncing off of what the planning commission ruled regarding the variance. Where do you think they got it wrong? Do you think
On the variance or on the?
Well, yeah, let's.
I think the city got it completely wrong on their setback requirements.
Okay, and the planning commission did as well?
Oh, God, completely.
Okay.
Completely.
Okay.
Completely, but they didn't respond to us when they voted on us. If you go back and look at the meeting, we didn't really get anything regarding the substance of what we talked about. The gentleman sitting there, and I think he asked counsel what he thought of what I said, and the only thing I got was I was being disingenuous. That's a nice word for being deceitful. Lawyers throw that word around a lot.
Yeah.
But no, they're dead wrong on that. And I said, if you've got, we had meetings at the property. I said, if you got anything that says we're wrong, show it to me.
Yeah.
Crickets, again, we never got anything. Oh, they referenced some stuff in their responses to our letter when we had it, but those are all just as wrong as anything else they said.
So the planning commission got it wrong, got the whole entire concept of the code wrong, so therefore.
I don't think they decided it on the basis of the code.
Yeah.
There are too many comments about previous problems with the Coolmans and not really liking what the cyclone fence looked like with slats. Actually, I had people saying they thought that was unsightly. Apparently ignoring that 800-foot run you have of it next to the park across the tracks. I think it looks fine myself. But, you know, we really wish they would have come up with something a little bit nicer. What does that have to do with the price of tea? And, you know, we're talking about what the code says, not whether it's pretty, and not whether you dislike Kurt Coolman. We've had problems with him in the past. When people are talking like that just before you take the vote, you got to wonder what drove the vote. I have my suspicions, but I won't make any accusations. Okay?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I believe, do we have someone else speaking on behalf of the city, or is it just at this point we make a decision?
No, public comment. You have to open
Public,
a public
okay.
hearing.
Public hearing.
We're gonna open up to public comment. If you have anything you'd like to say on this matter, come to the podium and give us your name, please.
Larry Grossi, 1455 First Street. Thank you for letting us be here tonight. I just want to make just 3 comments. One comment at Mr. Critchman.
Crummage.
Okay, Crummage. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said if I would have come to city council or to staff or to planning commission to ask for a variance, I think you hit the head right on the head. I would have come and asked for that first. And if staff would have come out or the city would have come out and said, no, this is where the fence needs to go, then before just putting posts in the ground, I would come back and ask for the variance. One thing. The other thing is the existing buildings. Most of those buildings have been there since the 20s, a lot of those homes, including some of the buildings that I have there. If we want to talk about where the fence needs to go back to the property that the Coolmans have, and there's a house at the corner at the very end of Roosevelt, and there is a fence that sits back where the city has asked the first time where the posts were put and all agreed where the fence needs to go. And if you go out there, if you visited the site, you will see that fence. And if we don't start doing things to follow what needs to be followed, when do we start? The next one? The next one? The next one? I don't know. I mean, we have to start at some point. We can't just say, well, because they didn't have it done. I put up 2 fences there for our property. One of them, I had to set back 15 feet, 30 inches high. Then I could go up to 6 feet and carried it back. I didn't fight it. I mean, that's what it said in there. I didn't find any other way of getting around it. I mean, this is what has to happen. This is what I did. If we don't start somewhere, when do we start? That's all I have to say.
All right, sure.
The fence line that goes to the property with the little house next door, if you put the fence where the city wanted it to go, it runs through their front porch. Okay? So you're dealing with the same situation there as you have anywhere. Okay? Everything along that street does not deal with this setback. And in all honesty, when she went out to put the fence up, they said it had to go there. She wasn't sure. She was told that it had to be, what, 25 feet? 23 feet off the roadway, so she stepped off 23 feet and it came out pretty close to exactly where we were. And it's just whatever it's worth. The original location that we were told the fence was supposed to go was off by 18 inches. Now, what would have happened if we had put it up there? 18 inches too far back. Who's going to pay to move it? City staff? Kind of doubt it. We'd have to live with it. And 18 inches is a pretty significant mistake when you got the maps and you got the equipment and you got the expertise to go out and do this. And it would have been off. We'd have had it back 18 inches if we'd have immediately put it up where it was supposed to go. So it's probably a pretty good thing that they didn't, because it would have been heaping error on top of error, and that's not good. So anyway, that's where we are. Thank you again.
So I have a follow-up question.
Yes,
So-
sir.
So the bulk of your argument is that from the planning commission on, or the city planner on, has misinterpreted the setback requirements?
Yes.
All right, so there's no argument as far as the 17.57.030, the special circumstances that we should be looking for to grant the variance. There's no argument as far as the circumstances relating to the use of the property. It's merely based on the setback requirements being misinterpreted.
No, the setback requirements being misinterpreted is what caused the fence to be, basically for us to be moving forward as though we were wrong, when in fact we were not. Okay, that's where that came into place. In terms of the variance, I guess this has to do with how you look at a variance. Is it something that you should really avoid granting? I mean, look for reasons not to, or is it something that if it's possible, and again, as the United States Supreme Court going back a bazillion years and it's never changed, how does it affect its health, safety, morals, well-being of the city? In this particular case, we recognize that all of these other buildings were done, all these other setbacks were created by way of possibly a plot plan. Mostly they were probably just there before they were incorporated and they just put stuff where they wanted. But we're going to be the only building, a set fence that's even close to what this is.
All right, so your first argument is misinterpretation of the setback.
Correct, and once that's done, the inquiry should be over with.
And then we would never get to the variance.
Correct, exactly.
All right, and then if we got the setback requirements correctly interpreted, at least from the city's interpretation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then you're asking us to take a look at the variance process.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it as far as the variance goes, what are the special circumstances, what is the use of the property that we should be considering to grant a variance, assuming we got setback requirements correct?
The special circumstances that exist are what we spoke of in our application and the statement that I made. We are being asked to do something that creates virtually a setback aberration with everything that's along the street. Okay, we appreciate that you want to start doing things and following the code and doing what it's supposed to be, but you've got this lot that is surrounded by properties that did not have to abide by this. And we do not believe that the fact that they did not have to abide by this necessarily means that the fact that we're being pushed back an extra 15 feet does not justify granting a variance so that we are consistent with everything in the neighborhood. And again, I considered it kind of a nice compromise. We still say the city was wrong. But you say it here, we say it's not, and we believe it. How about you just throw a variance at us, and then we can put it up there?
So the special circumstances would be, and the use of the property would be based on the surrounding properties, not necessarily the specific use of the Coolman property. It's to be consistent with other properties in that.
Sure. Why have something that's set back that much farther when everything else is built right up against the sidewalk?
So
What
is
does
there-
it hurt?
Okay, so assuming the setback requirements are correct, and then we look at the variance, and we're looking for those special circumstances that relate to the use of the property, and is there something about the use of the property that leaving the fence where it is, or where the city says it should be, is there some impact on the use of the property that we should consider?
I think they will tell you that for the time being, they have no plans to use the property for anything. Hence, there is nothing that's going to be going on there that would justify a larger setback. There's nothing there. It's going to be an empty lot.
Or in converse, there wouldn't be anything to justify altering the current setback as
Well,
interpreted by the city.
What we're looking at here is in the event that someday they decide to do something with this property, they decide to develop it, they're going to have to do a site plan. They're going to have to go, and the city is going to have the opportunity to say, okay, what are you going to do with this? You're going to plant some stuff there? Are you going to park something there? Maybe the setback is not that big a deal. Oh, you're planning on putting in a nuclear energy silo. We might need a little bit more setback for that one, folks. That can be addressed when they make a move to do something with that property. So long as it's a pile of dirt, there's no reason to force that setback to be that far because there's nothing taking place on that property that has to be physically separated from the rest of the community.
So when you look at the ordinance and you look at variances, we're looking for special circumstances on the property or the use of that specific property, not the surrounding properties, but Coolman's property, and how this may impact the use of that property. So the reverse or the converse argument to what you're saying is there is no impact on the current use of the property, so you could put the fence where the city has interpreted it to need to go, and in the future, when the Coolmans have decided what they want to do with the property, then they could come back and they say, okay, we need this space, and then it could be addressed by the city at that time.
Well, you know, it's very clear, the United States Supreme Court and the state courts when looking at this have not deemed to be a setback to be a taking. Okay, that's not necessarily a taking.
Right.
Okay, so we can't argue this is a taking of property. Okay, but nonetheless, you're forcing this fence to go back onto their property farther than what it needs to be, and essentially they've created a de facto parking lot between Roosevelt Avenue and their fence if they incorporate this, and they got people working next door parking on what is really their property. Okay, it's not the city's property. It's beyond where the city right-of-way, the right-of-way is for Roosevelt Avenue. So to a certain extent, they haven't lost anything. Maybe the city council would look at it as a good thing that they now have a parking lot over there. We don't think it is. We don't think that necessarily they should be having a setback incorporated so that the general public can have a place to park on Roosevelt. But, you know, are we looking at anything that they don't plan to do anything with it right now? So consequently, there is nothing there that justifies the setback, okay? And there's nothing there that justifies no granting of a variance. And again, maybe it looks, I like variances too, because it shows that people aren't set in stone in how they interpret these things, that people are capable of looking at circumstances, totality of the circumstances, and saying, you know, understand what we've got here, but we think under this circumstance, back there on Roosevelt, where the last thing going back there is P&L, we can let that slide this time, particularly when everything in the area is what it said, you know, is set up a completely different way. That's where we're coming from. I can't tell you, yeah, they're planning on doing A, therefore they don't need it. They're planning on doing nothing.
Right.
So there's nothing that requires it that much of a setback from Roosevelt or the people across the street in order to ensure the safety, the morals, the welfare of the city of Escalon.
So our authority rises from the ordinance and how the ordinance is interpreted. So if we were to do something outside of the ordinance, we would be exposing ourselves to doing something that we have no authority for. So looking at this, your first argument is that we misinterpreted the ordinance. So I think that is our starting point, where I would prefer to have some time to take a look at that, take a look at your interpretation, take a look at our interpretation, and see if there's something within that ordinance that either is ambiguous or that needs to be addressed by the council for clarity, so we don't find ourselves in these situations again. So first we would look at that. Then we would move on, assuming that the interpretation by the city was correct and the ordinance would require the fence to go in the location the city says it's supposed to go there. Then we would move on to the variance, and that's where we may have to revisit it, because looking at the position that you've taken, it is an interpretation problem, but there's no ability for this council to make findings under our variance ordinance to grant the variance. That's what I'm struggling with.
Why don't you have the authority?
Well, because I don't think you've presented the special circumstances or anything that relates to the use of that property that would trigger a variance by the city.
Other than the absence of a use that does not impact the health, the safety, or the welfare of the city of Escalon? I think that's a reason.
Well, but that's one, what is it, A through D? I think that's D. So there's multiple.
The city was right on one thing. Our argument hits on all of them. It's the same one. I mean, listen, they come up with 4 things, but they basically all ask a lot of the same things over and over again.
And I have no problem with variances, and I have no problem with taking action that we have the authority to take and to making things happen. I'm just not comfortable that we're there yet. And the greater concern for me is the interpretation of the setbacks and whether or not we're properly interpreting.
Well, there's no question that those need to be clarified. They're very ambiguous, they're very poorly written, and they don't address this situation. I would say the correction of that is coming attractions, not necessarily something that has to be done prior to making a decision on this issue, because that's a fairly long, drawn-out process if you're going to go through and you're going to rewrite your code.
Well, looking at the history of this, it seems like it's gone through the process, and there at multiple stages, those setbacks have been determined to be correct. So now we're in a position to where we're being asked to disregard that process and make a determination here on the dais that we agree with you that the setbacks are ambiguous, they need clarity, and they're misinterpreted. So I'm certainly not in a position to do that, but I'm certainly willing to look at those to see if there is an issue that can be addressed.
Well, that's fair.
Can
Obviously,
I make a comment about
Sure.
that? So I hate to interject. It's not very often that I disagree with Councilman Legero, but I feel like on this particular issue, this is exactly the kind of thing that we do have authority on. It's very easy just to follow the code. If we just had to follow the code exactly the way it was, there would be no reason for an appeal process. There'd be no reason for variance requests. There might not even be a reason for a city council. The city planning commission could take care of that. The reason I like variance requests and the fact that we have that is that we can handle these special circumstances. And to me, the special circumstances is that the Kuhlmans purchased that property. They purchased all of it. They spent money to purchase a certain plot of land. They want to put a fence up. They want to put it up here. So on record, I'm against setbacks because I feel like it's taking away somebody's private property. If I have to put a fence 15 feet back from my property line, well, I just lost 15 feet of my property. So again, I think this is a special circumstance. I think it goes down to private property rights, and I think that we do have the authority on the city council. If we don't, then nobody does, to grant a situation like this a variance. And so, again, I would appeal to my fellow councilmen let's get past the ordinance. If it was just the ordinance, if it was just the code, there's no reason for an appeal. Our job is to make a call. We set the ordinance, right? We can change the ordinance. That's our job. Okay, so we do have the authority.
Just for my clarification, and for those folks that are probably watching that didn't necessarily read the package, from the post that the city says this is your line in the sand of where you need to put the fence, and then the post that you put up where you want to put the fence, what is that measurement? How many feet are we talking differentially between your mark and the
Tammy,
city's
what is
mark?
that, about 9 feet?
Yeah.
About 9 feet, 8 feet, yeah.
Well, 8'2" is the variance,
8
but
foot,
between
okay.
the poles, I'm not sure.
I think it's like
So-
8 or 9
so
feet,
we're-
something like
We're
that.
talking 8 to 10 foot that you're looking to move towards Roosevelt.
Yeah.
from the
And then on,
city's-
on First Street, I think it's about 4 feet. They want us to move it back about 4 feet on
Correct.
First, right?
Yes,
Yep.
that is correct.
Okay,
So we're looking at about 8 or 9 feet, that's all we're.
okay,
looking at
I'm
now.
just trying to,
Yeah, it's not a full
I've been
15.
by it, but I didn't go out and
Not a
walk it.
full
so-
15. When they stepped it off, they missed it by about 8 feet.
Question, I understand where Mayor Pro Tem Legero is coming from on this one. The three words that I heard that really made my ears perk up. Let it slide. And so that's one thing that I think we're trying to grapple with. In section C, I don't know if you're familiar with the four
Yeah.
findings that they would, how do you feel that this would not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitations upon property in the vicinity and same zoning classifications?
How can it be a special privilege when everybody else is built up right next to the sidewalk? We're not asking everybody else. We're just asking to have what everybody else has. We're not asking for a special privilege. We're not saying, well, everybody else has got 15 feet, but we just think we need to be 5 feet back because, gosh darn it, that's what we want, okay? We're not asking for the special privilege other than to simply be allowed to put our fence in a setback position where every other property has it located.
Okay.
That's all it is. We're not asking for anything special. We appreciate, the temporal serendipity of having been, put your stuff up before any of this stuff started. Sorry. But nonetheless, it's just, there's no reason to force somebody to push it that far back when everybody else is virtually up against the sidewalk.
All right, but is
That's all.
this also based on, again, the staff, planning commission, everybody misinterpreting the code? So would we be making the same
well,
mistake again?
No, the staff misinterpreted the code, okay? The fence should be exactly where my people put up the post, okay? That's where it should be, in our opinion, because I haven't heard anything else. The other part of it, in terms of the variance, now we're getting into a completely different section where he said, see, are you asking for anything over and above what anybody else has? Are you asking for any special dispensations? Are you asking for any little extras that nobody else got? No, we're just asking to be somewhere close to where everybody else is.
And that's within the context of the code as it is now, not 20, 30, 50 years ago?
No, that's within the context of the code where it is now. We're just saying that, okay, serendipitously, everybody else, because of, and I think when you're going down Roosevelt, these are just properties that have been there since God was a corporal. So, they didn't have anything they had to worry about. They were fortuitous to put their stuff in before anybody cared. And now what you have is all of these things that, if they're too close, all of these places represents a hazard. They represent a problem.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna do anything about it, so why, way down there on the end, are we saying, you gotta get this thing back 15 feet? You just have to do it.
Yeah.
There's just no reason not to do it. You have to do it. And this is why we wanted the full court press. The full court press to make them abide by something that makes them an aberration compared to everybody else on the street. That's why we think a variance is appropriate. That's why we don't think that we're asking you to do anything outside the scope of your authority by granting this variance. It's entirely within your power to do it. Entirely.
Okay, any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for him before he sits down?
Sir?
That gentleman's got a question. He was standing up
Oh,
behind you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
say something. Harrison Grassi, I'm his son. He said that everybody on Roosevelt has pretty much said that everybody on Roosevelt has these fences that are all willy-nilly kind of scattered around. But I know at Chandler Enterprises, they built it according to the code and followed the rules and regulations of the city, and there wasn't any problems. So that's just my 2 cents, I guess. But
I have a question. How is the fence Coleman's own affect your company or your business or your development in a negative way that you're damaged? Explain that to me.
Well, I don't think I'm the right person for you to be asking that to because I'm just an employee. So if
Well,
you'd like to.
Your father more than welcome to answer that question.
I personally don't have any issues with the fence. I don't have a problem. It's not going to affect my business. But the problem is if the city has rules and regulations put down and only 85% of the people that come into the city that want to develop have to follow those, and the other 15% don't, then why have the rules?
Well, Mr. Grassi, I think the rules are guidelines, and I would not say that everybody plays by the same rules, regardless, okay? I just, based on my experience in life and also on this council, I understand your frustration with the system, totally understood. We've had a conversation about it. And at the time, I think I explained to you, in a world that we live in, rather than being so rigid that everything had to be exactly the way it's written, is not, in my opinion, the way it should be. I think rules are guidelines, and we need limits and guidelines to have an idea what it is we want to achieve ultimately. And that, for that reason, I feel different about it. So I understand your position completely, clearly. And what I was concerned about is the damages that you're gonna, I don't see damages from what's happening to your property.
I don't either.
And
I don't either, Mr. Alves. But you also have to understand, when I put the fence up, it's always related that we're so far down on Roosevelt. We're so far down on Roosevelt, sorry. If you guys would take the time and go out and see where that fence starts on that piece of property that they own that has a residential home on it, it doesn't go through the front porch. It starts at the corner of the house. And that's exactly where the city had asked to put the fence. So again, if the city comes out to me and says, you have to put the sidewalk here, but I take it upon myself and I move it 3.5 feet over, what's gonna happen?
Well, if your interpretation, excuse me, if you.
But it wasn't interpreted. If the city was specifically came out and said, the fence needs to go here, and then afterwards I go and put the fence wherever I want to put it, that's not a reason to come and ask for a variance. A variance is, if you came out and you said, no, the fence has to go here, staff came out and said, the fence has to go here, before I would put a post in the ground, I would come to the city council meeting and say, hey, I want to request a variance. So I don't want to put the fence here. I want to put it here because of these reasons. And there's no hardship. It's an empty piece of lot.
Was that done in this case? Ask first, okay.
It's argumentative is the problem.
Whatever
Okay.
it's worth.
I think you've answered my question.
Okay.
Okay,
If you're interested in this, folks, photograph of where he put the posts in place in relation to the house next door, showing, all you have to do is visualize 9 feet from that. I'll be more than happy to show it around. Everybody's got it in their packet.
Yeah.
You move 9 feet back from where those posts are, it goes through his front porch. It goes through the awning. There it is.
I've already been there.
No, there it is.
There's the post right here. I can tell you. It's at the corner of the house.
Gentlemen,
Guys,
Mr. Dickerson, you know better than that.
what's that?
okay,
Oh, just showing him that he wanted to see the picture.
all right.
Okay, the only thing I want to say is we're not following the rules. We just spent thousands of dollars following your rules. We went through your appeal process. We spent thousands of dollars. That's not even counting me. We're not following the rules. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. We're following the appeal process. Maybe offensive to some folks, but they call it due process. And we're doing everything that's expected of us. That's all.
Let me make a comment here. So first of all, again, I appreciate the discussion. I think this is exactly what living in a democracy is about. You can discuss things and argue as long as it's in a civil manner, and we can hopefully come to an agreement. Not everybody's always happy, but Let me first of all say that I'm thrilled with how the Chandler Enterprise venture is looking out there. I mean, I love it. I tell everybody, I'm like, look at what they're doing. It's beautiful. It's great. I really, really appreciate what you're doing. I honestly do. I just have to go back again. At the Planning Commission, the staff analysis was that the city does not foresee that the variance would be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or material or interest of properties or improvements in the vicinity. That was the staff's findings. It's not gonna be a problem, it's not gonna affect anything in the future. And if we simply followed the code to the letter of the law every single time, what would be the result? What if the setback was 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet? Where does it end? To me, this is a larger issue. It's going to, how can a private property owner push back and retain more of their private property to do with what they want and dispose of it how they will? And I think tonight we have heard that the fence that is going up.
Councilmember Crummich, we're still in public comment and.
I know, but I want to finish my comment, please. The question is, will the fence negatively affect anybody? And I think that the findings have been that it won't. Thank you.
Okay, now, is there any more comment? Please, podium.
I'm Marty Van Houten, 481st Street. First of all, Ed, Larry didn't mention this, and you asked if it affected his property. And I think it does. Larry didn't say that. He said he didn't think it affected his property at all. But as I understand it, this is on First Street, between the building and the fence, there's like 20 feet there or something like that. And I'm assuming that's going to be used for an entrance and exit.
Just for exit.
Or just for exit. So if you're at exit and you've got to look through a chain link 6-foot-high fence with slats in it in order to look towards the railroad tracks, how do you tell whether, you know, what's on the street until you pull your nose out onto the street? So the other thing is, they said they have no intention or any planned use for the property. And if that's true, then why did they put a gate there along First Street? And why did they put a sliding gate next to Larry's 20-foot exit? It seems like that would, unless they've worked out an agreement with Larry on how they can have their trucks or whatever it may be, whatever they have planned in the future, to use that sliding gate, they have to go over his property.
I understand all that. What I don't understand, Marty, is what does that have to do with the variance?
Well, if you do, I'm just leading to, if you do authorize a variance, I would say that you need to keep it down at least to the 30-inch limit until, so that people exiting the property will have a visual sight line there. So that it does affect Larry's property, and it does. And if you do, I don't know whether you will grant a variance or not, but it seems to me. And then what happens if they have that gate there on the First Street side? So now they open up the gate, and if they're going to run trucks in and out of there, the truck's going to stall on the First Street and on the railroad tracks.
We have prohibited truck traffic from that location.
Yeah.
That's initially what we did when they had their other business there. We prevented them from bringing those trucks on First Street and also Roosevelt. That's why they shut down the business they currently had, which is a still moving business. The weight of the trucks and the trucks themselves, we ban from those two roads.
Okay.
So those are not going to happen.
Okay, but still, what about cars or whatever? Or what if it is truly going to be just a parking lot?
Well, the thing I think here, keep in mind, they have to go through a process. If they ever develop that property, that'll address everything you've brought up. It's not going to happen otherwise. The bottom line is, and from my perspective, the variance is to secure the property, end of story, and then if in fact they decide to do anything with it, then they're going to have to come back and go through the process, and they'll address everything that needs to be addressed at that time. I will probably be on the council. whoever it is will have to address whatever it is at the time they're gonna be dealing with it. All right?
I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
So we've been focusing on the Roosevelt fence line. Just to be clear, your variance request is also.
I'm talking about First Street.
Yeah, I understand. I'm getting, that's where I was going with before you started.
Are you directing this to me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, stand
Come
up.
back, please do.
It doesn't
Thank
matter,
you.
but yeah.
I prefer it.
So this variance report or variance request does include not moving the fence line on First as well, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you're looking for both fence lines, because we've been
Yeah.
focusing on Roosevelt, we haven't said anything about First Street
No,
at this point.
tiny
So
bit,
I'm-
yeah,
so I'm
not very
asking
much,
about
yeah.
that.
And we can tell you why there's a gate there if you're interested, but it's not
Out
wrong.
of curiosity, what is it for?
When the property was sold to Mr. Grossi, they negotiated a license agreement. So there's a contractual license agreement that allows them to pass over a certain portion of Mr. Grossi's property for access, so cars can come out there.
Okay.
So there is, however, coming attractions, the city ordered him to put a planter in front of our gate as part of the beautification process. So that's something we may be having to deal with down the line. But basically, Mr. Grossi and the city have rendered our license useless.
You're talking about on First Street side?
Yep. Yep.
Right near the railroad track?
The city was no part of the license agreement.
That does not matter. Supreme Court has said, cities through their ordinances cannot interfere with contracts between private citizens. And that's what you did.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman?
This variance request is only until the project is developed, and at that point, then that goes away. Is that your request?
Well, well, I mean, what's gonna happen then is I believe that the city council or the planning commission will impose conditions on whatever, development they propose.
Absolutely.
That will supersede the variance.
Just making clear of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's,
I want to make that clear, if that's
yeah,
what
I
your
wanna be
intention
sure
is.
that's what's going on there. Absolutely, absolutely, you bet. Once they develop it, all bets are off, as far as I know.
That's correct.
I want to make a comment too, real quick. I think it's inappropriate to ask what they're gonna do with their own property. I don't know why I'm the only one who has a problem with that. It's their property. They bought it. They can do with it what they want. It's in the Constitution of the United States. It's not our job to know what business they want, what they want to do, this or that. They're trying to secure their property because they paid for it and they want to secure it.
And I think, again, not only that, but there's been a lot of things, well, if they do this in the future, and if they do that in the future, and if this happens, that will be addressed at that point in time, and you will have the opportunity to do what you see fit in terms of their regulating the use of that property. We're just dealing with what it is now. If they decide they want to do something with it, it's in your court.
That's kind of
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this matter? Is there anyone on the internet who would like to speak? Okay, we're gonna bring it back to the council. I'm gonna start with, Councilman.
Closing the public hearing.
I'm gonna close, let me close the public hearing. I'll bring it back to council for comment and any action needed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, before the council members start discussing, there's two main reminders here that I want to remind the council. Number one, you're sitting here in your quasi-judicial role, which means you're sitting here as a panel of judges, essentially, which means, more importantly, you're supposed to be open-minded and not to have predetermined the issues before basically the public hearing here. Anybody that has predetermined their decision, any council member should recuse themselves from the vote and from further discussion on it. Number two,
Completely object to that statement.
Number two is that the council the council may modify the decision. They might uphold it as Municipal Code 17.59090 allows. However, it cannot be arbitrary and capricious. So what I'm just saying here is, council members, if you're in your discussions and in whatever vote that you do, please make sure it's based on the law or the code, and not just because it's something that you've decided to make up or you think is right, even though it violates the code. It just cannot be arbitrary and capricious. Those are the two main things that I think I want you to keep in mind as you enter into your deliberations.
Do we have the authority as the city council, as elected members of the city council, to alter or change the code?
That's through a proper due process. So of course, the code.
What we're doing right now?
Absolutely not. And no.
Okay, in terms of granting variances, is it our authority to grant variances?
Pursuant to the code. In other words, as Councilmember Lajaro indicated, if there is no problems with the code itself, then the city council must look at the variance findings, what the council member and essentially what the planning commission needed to do, which was to determine certain findings in order to grant the variance. And I guess that's what I mean by don't be arbitrary, that you actually have to find certain things. There has to be a basis to grant a variance, and in this case, to overturn the planning commission's determination.
So what would determine a special circumstance?
Screen there, the definition.
Right. For now, I'd like to point out that there is a lot of information that's before you in the packet that discusses whether it's a special circumstance or not. And I know staff could address some of this since they've been thoroughly involved in what has been discussed and what is not. So I could assist you further, but I think first the other council members might be able to help you do that during your discussions.
Well, we'll see. I guess I had two things, if I may, Mayor Alves. The staff's analysis at the planning commission was that the city does not foresee the variance to be detrimental. So isn't that the staff's recommendation that a variance is not going to be a problem?
I'm going to let staff. Right.
Sure.
Please.
Dominique, do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
So I know this packet is large. It's going to take me a minute to get through here. So the first action that went through was the appeal on staff's recommendation or staff's interpretation of the municipal code. So in that staff report, the staff provides 11 reasons that support our municipal code and disagree with how the code was interpreted by the applicant. So there are 11 reasons listed in there. It talks about their main reasoning being there's no yard because there's no building. But the definition of the yard listed in that section talks about a building, but then it also talks about where these street lines are defined in the municipal code, and so how the street is measured, and then where your improvements come in. And so that's how we're moving forward. The city knows if that street was ever reconstructed in the future. We know the width, the size of the road that's gonna go in there. We know how large the sidewalks are supposed to be, that they have to have the curb gutter sidewalk. We are trying to ensure that in the future, because, and I know they don't like looking into the future, but that's what planning is in the city. You're preparing in areas of town for what the future is gonna bring. We're always having to look out. And so when you're looking out and you're looking down the street, I mean, especially with the redevelopment that's going on in that area, you're visualizing that sometime, hopefully in the near future, maybe not so much in the near future, Roosevelt Avenue is going to be reconstructed. At some point, it
Sure.
would be completely reconstructed, and we're gonna reconstruct it up to current guidelines, current restrictions, blah,
I
blah,
understand
blah.
that.
So when that happens, all of those non-conforming uses, we're gonna have to deal with them at that time. And you're gonna put curb gutter sidewalk in, you need to put it in the whole entire way, and you need to
Understand
make
that.
sure it's all lined up. But there's 11 reasonings in there,
Okay, let me interject really quick. I
and then we
apologize.
do go through each of the letters, A, B, C, and D, with the response as to why. And so when we're saying A through C is not relevant, I guess the sentence should have been more completed, is not relevant in response to the municipal code requirements. They don't have, it's staff's interpretation in implementing the 4 findings that are required for a variance, that they don't meet A, B, or C. The only one they do meet is D, that it's not detrimental to health, public, and safety.
Thank
And
you.
that's why we advise to go for a variance, and that's why it goes to planning commission, because that's the process. If staff can't approve it, it moves to a body to be approved.
I understand all that.
Yeah.
I understand that. Let me ask this specifically. How is the fence, if it was constructed, is it going to affect curb gutter and sidewalk in the future? If a curb gutter and sidewalk is to be put in, is the fence gonna be right in the middle of that, or is it just gonna be a little closer than what the code says?
So the fence is gonna be set back, the sidewalk, curb gutters, what, about 6?
Yeah, it was an 8 foot, so it's going to be set back 7, just a little less than 7 feet.
So
from
you'll
the
still
side
be
front.
able to put in a curb gutter and sidewalk?
Curb gutter and sidewalk will be
Yes.
able to fit, correct.
Okay,
But our municipal code says 15 feet.
I understand
And
that.
so that's how we practice it.
absolutely, and I appreciate that fact that the staff is following the code. I just don't look at that as my job. I'm not up here to just follow the code, because why am I up here? My job is to make decisions about things that don't follow the code. My job is to change things for the betterment of the community. My job is to do what I think is right. And I tried to have a detailed analysis. The staff analysis was that the city does not foresee the variance would be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or material or interest of properties improvements in the vicinity. We've heard from the neighboring property owner, and he said it doesn't affect him in any way. We've had the applicant go through the laborious and expensive process of submitting and seeking a variance, and I don't know how we could not approve it. I really don't. I mean, if we're just up here to enforce the code, then what are we doing up here?
The reason the planning commission didn't approve it, and as Dominique stated, they only met one of the objectives to qualify for a variance. And the others were in the staff report that there are not special circumstances that are applicable to it.
What did
So
they meet that required a variance?
The only one is that it's not detrimental to the health and
Well,
safety.
to
That's
me, that
only
is
one
a
item.
very big
But-
item.
But the way the code reads is it needs to meet all 4 items.
All right, I don't know if I'm being clear up here. Maybe I'm speaking to myself. The code, I'm not up here to simply enforce the code. That's not my job. That's not why I got elected. That's not why I ran. I didn't try to become part of the planning commission. I didn't apply to a city job. I ran because I want to influence things that I think will be better for this community. To me, what it comes down to, and I'm not going to harp on this, I think I've made my point clear. Let me finish with this. The Kuhlmans purchased the property. They own that property. Private property rights are protected. They're sacred under our United States Constitution. They are trying to construct a fence to protect their property. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't know the Kuhlmans. I don't know Mr. Grossi. What I'm trying to be is very objective. I'm trying to make a good decision here. And I believe that a variance request for this circumstance is justified. Now, whether or not my fellow councilmen feel the same way, I have no idea. But I'm going to conclude with that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Bellinger, would you would like to add anything?
I'm good for now.
Councilman Swift?
Yeah, I think my big concern is, okay, and I agree with everything you say. I also feel that, when you go forward, also our job is to be able to, if we do grant a variance, is to be able to explain, staff can explain, planning commission can explain, everybody can explain why we granted a variance in this case without any ambiguity, okay, without any confusion. And I know we've spent an awful lot of time talking about these 4 circumstances, and there's a lot of opinions out there. Well, this one they met, this one they didn't meet. The staff originally thought they met them. The planning commission thought, well, they only met one of them. This is, to me, this just reeks of ambiguity, and it reeks of, I don't know how we would be able to explain the next time this comes up under similar circumstances, regardless of whether or not the property, they have a plan to build the property or not, regardless of what we all think of the fence, I don't think it looks that bad, okay? Can we explain clearly the next time this happens why we did this in such a way so that the majority of people will go, okay, I get that. I will tell you this. In the past, when we have made exceptions without a clear explanation and a clear argument to back up the next situation, invariably, they bite us in the you-know-where. And that's one thing I'm really gonna caution this council for. That's how I'm interpreting this at this point. You know, can we clearly explain why we're doing this in a way so that most people will go, yes, I understand, I get it. I don't know if we can with this, in this situation.
Okay, Pro Temp Legero.
I think I've said my
Stated your
piece.
opinion? Very good. Well, it's a touchy situation, no matter how we look at it. Councilman Swift, your point is well taken, just as Crummage's, Councilman Crumage. It's, you know, to be honest with you, I do believe a lot along the lines of what Councilman Crumage said this evening. We're here to make decisions. Those decisions are not, we have to be chastised by what everyone's decided is what the rules are. We are the ones that are supposed to interpret the rules and make them. That's what we're here for. And what's the betterment of this community? That's what we're here for. And whether staff did or did not misinterpret, I don't see that as, that's not bothering me so much. I'm along the lines of private property and how people can use their property versus how anyone else should think differently. In response to the question is why would they have a right to take property? Well, in a civilized society like we have, there are certain standards we try to set to maintain standards, and that's probably where you get the setback rule and all that. I get that. But at the same time, I still believe property rights is supreme. And I still believe that it's our responsibilities to interpret these rules because we make them and we can change them. And I know there's a lot of concern here, but the process, if this was a situation where there was no logic at all to allow for a variance, I would get it. They wouldn't even be here. But they are here. And they've made their argument. And to be honest with you, I don't fault it. I think I understand Pro Temp Legero's issue. He's a professional in this area, and he knows stuff about procedures that I may or may not agree with. And I don't think that's really relevant. I think what has to happen this evening, we're gonna have to, if we have a motion, we're gonna vote on it. If we don't, we're gonna put it off and come back to it again. But I'd be open to accepting a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to move on staff's recommendation.
Can we clear what that was? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
the recommendation is to deny the applicant's appeal of the planning commission's decision on variance application 21-741, which denied the request for reduced setbacks on a chain link fence located at 1528 Roosevelt Avenue.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and second. All those in favor?
No, we have discussion, right?
Okay.
We do have discussion.
Staff discussion?
We have discussion.
It doesn't look like this is going to go the way that I argued. This is a dereliction of our responsibility under the United States Constitution, an oath that we swore supersedes the code of Escalon. It supersedes anything else. The private property rights of an individual are being infringed on right now. They're not allowed to put a fence where they want on their property. Whether or not it complies with our local city code. And I think that is a damn shame.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion to move on staff's recommendation, which is to deny. We have a second, and we will take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
There it is. All right, let's move to the next. I'm sorry?
What happened?
It was a 3-2.
It was denied.
Okay. All right, let's move on to item, where are we anyway? Oh, let's see, number 6, consideration of a request to remove and relocate the new backstop at Swanson Park. Staff.
The city received a request from Brandon Dodge requesting the city council consider removing or relocating the recently installed backstop located in Swanson Park, Exhibit A. Included in the city of Escalon's fiscal year budget 2021, capital improvement projects was the addition of 3 new backstops in local parks. These improvements were all allocated out of the Parks and Recreation funds. When considering the placements, the backstops placements, staff looked at the recent request and local park usage. Staff has received several requests for installing a backstop at Swanson Park, as it has been utilized for several years for teams to practice. Staff evaluated the area and chose the placement in consideration with safety concerns with its location to the playground equipment, streets, homes, and other usage. The backstop was placed in the middle of the park, over 40 feet from the existing masonry wall, with 52 feet from the wall to the front of the backstop. Staff felt that over the 40 feet between the backstop and the wall kept a reasonable distance between the backstop and homes. The backstop will also include a hood on the top to prevent any foul balls from going behind the backstop towards the houses. It was placed in the middle of the park to protect the vehicles on either side of the park. Swanson Park has been a common place for baseball, soccer, football practices, and other activities such as flying kites or volleyball. Keeping the original placement of the backstop allows for these activities to continue with minimal interference. Movement of the backstop would not necessarily prevent these activities, but could cause some interference. Due to recent rains, the backstops had not been completed with the wings and wings and hood. With the recent request of removal and relocation, staff did ask the contractor not to continue until this item has been considered. There are plans for added signage to the backstop and masonry wall. Do not hit walls against the fence. We will also be painting approximately 6 feet of red curb in front of a fire hydrant located in the very southeast corner of the park near the masonry wall, and installing, well, I believe we've already installed trash and recyclable containers. Staff has received feedback from residents voicing the appreciation of the backstop at Swanson Park. If there is a decision to relocate the backstop, there will be an additional $2,800 for the relocation. The letter and pictures presented by Mr. Dodge at the City Council meeting on March 15th are attached to the staff report in Exhibit B. City Council should consider the request to remove or relocate the new backstop at Swanson Park. And staff is not making a recommendation on this. We're leaving this one up to the council. And this is a picture of the completed backstop at the Shadowwood Park. This is not Swanson Parks. I just included that for what the hood and the wings look like.
Okay, so is Mr. Dodge here this evening? Would you
Yes, he
please
is.
come to the podium, please? Mr. Dodge, would you like to state your case?
I pretty much put everything into that packet and spoke to you guys last time. I know you weren't really allowed to discuss on it. I am glad that you read it. I actually like to thank council members who actually came out and discussed with me and looked at the actual backstop at the park. City manager is incorrect. It's not 40 from the wall, it's 30. I walked that out with a tape measure with 3 of the council members here that were able to come out and look at it, and they can agree with that.
Okay.
We've also returned now probably about 5 baseballs and 4 soccer balls. The soccer balls are now being kicked into the backstop as a goal. I actually had one hit my bedroom window, and then I hit by a 19-year-old kid who then got belligerent with my wife, who has a broken ankle, who told him that he would have to wait for her husband, myself, to come home and retrieve it, as she cannot physically go to the backyard and get it. He started cursing at her, started threatening her, then decided to jump our wall and trespass. We have the police department come out. I have a case number if you'd like to reference that. I'm trying to be really reasonable here. I'm asking for an additional 50 feet. That's what all the other backstops are in town from the closest house. If you're not gonna remove it completely, 50 feet. I worry about our safety, not only someone trespassing in my yard and now threatening my wife, but the safety of balls coming over regardless of whether or not it's gonna have a stop on it, on the roof, hitting me and my future family in the head. There's a lot of things that worry me about this backstop.
All right, I thank you. Is there any questions for Mr. Dodge, gentlemen? Let's start with Councilman Bellinger.
I was out there with them a couple weeks ago, I guess. We walked it off. We walked the whole park and kind of discussed the whole park layout. and everything. Like we had discussed when we were out there, I'm curious with our city attorney, what's the city's liability if we do move it, we don't move it? As a park in a neighborhood, where does our liability as a city begin and end with a park like that? I'm not versed in that to understand, you know, if we're playing, if kids in the neighborhood, if we move it and it's 80 foot away and kids are playing there and foul ball gets away from that backstop, breaks a window, do we have any liability at all in regards to any placement of where that backstop is?
There's a couple different factors that go in there, so I'd have to submit a memo to, since there's different factors, I'd need some time, and I could create a memo if the council would like to address that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is that all for you?
Yeah, I'm curious, I guess, where we get the $2,800 cost to move a backstop. There's 4 posts
Okay.
in the ground. That's just another kind of general question.
Councilman Crummage, would you like to take over next?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Alves. I also went out, looked at the backstop, had a lengthy discussion with Mr. Dodge about his concerns. I think he has made a very well thought out case, many good points, valid points, and I think it would be in the best interest of the council to move the backstop.
All right, Councilman Swift.
Yeah, I know, we took a look out there too, and, you know, moving that up 50 feet, that's a big park. And I don't think I realized how big a park that was, because I know that, you know, the kiddos are playing, you know, football out there, the kiddos are playing soccer out there. There's still gonna be gobs of room for that kind of stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that you may not still get some in your backyard because of where you're at. I mean, that's, you know, buyer beware, you know, but. However, I do think before we start saying, move it up 50 feet, move it here, move it there, maybe we better find out what that memo says first, so that wherever we take it is a true minimization of our liability. So I think maybe we ought to consider that in this as well. I don't know if we want to wait another meeting or not, but.
Is moving it 50 feet gonna change our liability where it is right now?
That's my question.
I'm not risk management, I
Pretty
don't
sure
know the
it's not.
answer. I
Okay,
don't know.
hold on, I gotta slow down, one at a time. Okay, so, are you done?
Yeah.
Very good. Pro Temp Majority.
Yeah, I'll defer to the memo. See, I have no problem with moving it, just if we're gonna move it, let's figure out
Right.
where it needs to go.
Okay, now, what I'm about to say is not a slam on anybody in the staff or anybody in the town, period. But the bottom line is, I think we could have exercised a little better judgment in this whole situation. And I'm not referring to where his is, I'm referring to all of them overall. I felt we should have considered a portable backstop for this particular situation and many more to arise. We've located them in some really good areas, and the people have responded positive to it. I don't deny that. I think it's a wonderful thing we've done, but I think we neglected to look it over a little harder to realize there are gonna be situations we're not gonna foresee that are gonna arise. And I think they should have been portable, so we could move them when we had a problem like that. Right now, we're stuck with them all on the ground, and at $2,800 to move them. Had we made them portable, we could have moved them. This wouldn't be an issue, nor would anywhere else. And again, it's not a slam. Nobody's perfect. This staff, this council, this town, none of us are perfect. But it's something we should have thought about, okay? It's one of those things like planting trees and sidewalks. I mean, why do we do that? Okay, but anyway.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to just see if there was any public comment on this
I'm
before?
getting to it.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Okay, but it's a situation where when we do these types of things, it's the old saying is, no good deed goes unpunished. And that's just about what this is. We tried to make a good impression on the community. We tried to give them something that they all really could use and wanted. And at the same time, we are a little derelict in our responsibility to consider the impact in a situation similar to Mr. Dodge's. Again, we're not perfect. And if I had it to do again, I've been advised of it prior, I might have recommended that. But for me personally, I feel that maybe we shouldn't have had that so close to his property. I think that's one of those things where I wish we would have thought it over a little better. All right, I'm done, so where do we go from here?
Well,
See if there's any,
yeah.
see if there's any
That's
public
right.
comment.
I'm sorry, I got all wound up there. All right, so is there any public, here we go. Come on down, please.
I'm Michael Dodge, 1420 Michelle Way, Escalon. I own the property that Brandon bought from me just recently to start his family. And if 80 feet is good for all the other pieces of property, 80 feet should be good for this one. It was initially designed, I understood, to be for T-ball. It's the other kids that are playing hardball that pitch a lot faster and play a lot harder, and their balls and the velocity coming off of there is a lot greater at 40 feet than it would be at 80 feet. And I think that the liability would be greater for the city at 40 feet than it is at 80 feet, because they're coming a lot faster off of there. You need to do something about this. I support the teams. I contribute to uniforms and baseball and football and soccer, everything in the community. I've lived here 25 years. But if somebody gets hit and gets hurt from this, and you knew that you had all the other ones at 80 and this one's at 40, you're going to be liable. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on the matter? Anybody on the internet would like to speak on the matter?
Yes, I would like to speak.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yes, we called the city today because we live to the right of this backstop on the side on Sophie Lane. We have found multiple people in our front yard retrieving balls. Like the former gentleman just said, they are hitting them hard. They're hitting them towards our house. We were also wondering what the liability was if the city would cover if our windows got hit or our car windows.
All right, is that all you'd like to say?
Yeah, and I know that they've come out and looked at the park. It's a really long park, but it is very, it's not very wide on the sides. So I agree. If it was for T-ball, then maybe we wouldn't have the balls in the front yard, but they have been in our bushes right by our front door retrieving those balls.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to say anything on the internet? All right, having not heard anything else, I guess we're gonna bring it back to the council.
I have a question for
Go ahead.
Tammy. Where are we at? And not that it really matters, because they're already playing out there. Baseball season's gonna start when? When will you start having official T-ball games out there?
We haven't, games don't start till the beginning of May.
Okay. And
But I don't know that we're gonna schedule games at that park.
okay, is there any, and I know other parents and kids, they love that, they love that there. I don't know, is there anything we can do to try to, I mean, I'm sure you can put signage all over the place, hey, little kids play only on this diamond.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like, playground equipment that's for kids under 8 years old. Unless you have somebody there to monitor it, you're not gonna be able to maintain that. That's the only people playing there.
Okay, and this question is to the city attorney, Mark. I'm not asking you to look into a crystal ball as to what you think the liability to be. It probably would be the wisest thing to actually see first, or ask risk management, where would be the best thing to move it to? I mean, again, to me, 50 more feet looks fine, but last thing I want to do is have Public Works move the thing again, and then move them again and again and again.
Well, Councilman Swift, if we were to move it, I'd recommend that we make it portable. So this is not an issue.
That was my next
anymore.
question, is how much would to do that? That was my next question.
Well, at $2,800, I don't know how far that would go and make it a portable. I can't imagine why it's $2,800 to dig it up and pull it out personally, but whatever it is, it is.
Well, Public Works Superintendent could answer to some of that if you'd
What do
like.
you got? What's the question? The question is, why is it $2,800 to dig it out?
Because the contractor quoted me that that's what it would cost him to remove the footings and the pillars and to remove them to whatever location.
And our city courtyard couldn't do that?
Sure.
I'm sure they could. So I think we're looking at removing it, at least in my opinion, and I think we should consider basically making it a portable. And if we do something like this again, I hope that we would consider those options. Trouble with permanent things is you're stuck right where they're at, and that's what you got no matter what. And they're so hard to foresee whatever thing could happen. I mean, things happen. I mean, like I said, good intentions are sometimes not received well.
Silly question, Justin, is it more cost effective to move that one, get that one out of there, and put a smaller one in, one that looks like a little kiddo, backstop,
What do you do with that one?
Well, we'll figure that out later. I'm just wondering if it's actually less expensive to just get a smaller backstop.
But do you think that a smaller backstop is gonna keep the older kids away from that?
Well, the reason I say that is because out of the soccer field, when the soccer's in play, you never see the big kids play at the little squirts backstops.
Right.
They be hitting their heads all day. Just a thought.
Okay, Mr. Dodge, go ahead. What do you
Yeah, I was also told by a law enforcement officer that we have a legal responsibility to return any balls in our yard, otherwise it's considered theft. So if you want me to call the Escalon Police Department to do that because my wife fears for her safety, then I will do that every single time a ball comes in our yard and a kid, no matter what age, is showing up at the door asking for it. I'm just gonna say, hey, legally I do have to give this to you, but we can't get in the backyard. I'm gonna call EPD, they can come out and waste your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge, but we don't need to go down these roads. Let's stop this right now. Let's just figure out what it is we can do to get this situation rectified. And it's my opinion, take it out. Staff, take it out, and let's modify it to a portable. We've got the backstop, it's a beautiful backstop. And I think if we were to modify it, we'd be fine. It could be moved anywhere. And
Would
then,
we be able to modify the one that's currently there, but we could purchase a portable one?
explain to me why you can't modify that.
Because of safety issues, because I wouldn't be able to buy the right type of equipment to install the chain link poles in order to make it a portable inside of the city park.
Well, I'm gonna beg to differ with you.
So, I mean, but I guess my concern with a portable is you have to worry about it being moved too.
Well, and granted, it can be moved, but that's the point of a portable. I mean, what do you think, people are gonna hijack it?
Well, the portable one's like,
Definitely think it would get stolen, I think people could get hurt.
You think that backstop that's on their on that park can get stolen? You think somebody's gonna pick it?
If it was portable,
If it was portable, you think that could get stolen?
Definitely.
That's a humongous backstop.
It's not that big.
no.
What are you gonna steal it with, a truck and trailer? I mean, you're not gonna walk out there and pick that up and pull it home.
You'd be surprised.
I don't
If it's
think I'd do
portable,
that.
about 4 guys will move that.
If I may, you have a portable one at Hogan Park, and the kids have dumped it over several times. I walked that park with my dog there where the baseball fields are. In the far back corner, they dumped it over like 3 or 4 times. I've
Is it
helped
as big as the one you have out there now?
I don't know exactly if
Is
it's
it?
as
I've
big.
seen
I
it.
think it is. It's pretty close. It's that far back diamond. And they've dumped it over 3 or 4 times.
Okay, well, Mr.
Myself and
Dodge,
another guy have stood it
you're-
up a couple of times.
Okay, Mr. Dodge, if
But-
you're opposed to a portable, that's fine.
I'm not opposed to it. I just
Well,
wanted to let
the
you know
comment
that
you
they do
make
get dumped and they
represents
do
that you're
get.
opposed to it. Let me ask you this. What is it that you're looking for relief on this situation?
I think if you move the diamond 80 feet out like you have all the rest of them, we'll deal with it.
Okay,
it's the
so,
additional 50 feet.
Well,
that
I want to
they're
bounce off that because Mr. Dodge is right. However, the other portable one, which technically is a portable one, the old T-ball one, that's right behind the shop, that's been there forever. You're right, the other one does get knocked over. That other one is anchored in the ground deep enough that I don't know when the last time I don't know if it's ever been tipped over. And it's not as big as the one that's out there now.
Right.
It is smaller.
It is smaller.
It would-
and
yeah.
it is anchored in the ground pretty well, though, the other portable one. It doesn't get moved. But the other one on the far side has been dumped at least.
Right.
Right.
okay,
But,
so,
but that's why conceptually, that's why I think that you're right, Justin's right, and if we can get a
Problem
portable
is-
one that's
problem-
anchored in, it might be
problem with
set.
this situation, there is no right,
Mayor, can I make a comment?
of course.
I think we should remove it. I think we should remove it and not have it there. Why, it's there in the first place because of COVID and we put backstops in everything, because the presumption is that we'll spread things out and kids will play there. There's no kids playing T-ball there. They're kicking soccer balls at it. They're doing this. It's causing a problem for a resident that lives close by. We're gonna move it 50 feet. Now we need a memo from our city attorney about this or that. That park is narrow. It's very narrow and it's long. It's no place for a backstop. It's no place for baseballs to be hit or anything like that. How about we remove it and be done with this?
It's not a bad idea either. All right, well, council, is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to remove the backstop.
Do we have a second? Here we go again. So we don't want to remove it, and we don't want to make it a portable. So what are we going to do with it? So let's,
I'd
we
like,
have a motion
yeah,
to relocate it.
I'd like to make a motion that we look into purchasing a portable backstop, move it 50 feet, additional feet up, okay, from the from the back there, anchor it in just like that first backstop that's right behind the park shop at Hogan Field, in that plan, and go with that
What are we
plan.
to do with the old one we have, the new one we put in?
We're gonna find a home for it someday.
Okay, so we're gonna dig it out and store it at the courtyard?
Yes,
That's the idea?
yes.
Okay. Do we have a motion to that effect?
I just made that motion.
So,
your motion?
so can you clarify that again? Make it a portable,
No, buy a.
Purchase a portable, a
Mm-hmm.
smaller portable backstop.
smaller?
Okay, fine.
Okay, I'm
Same
just
stuff.
asking.
A portable backstop. 50 feet, and place it 50 feet farther up into the park, all right? And that satisfies that requirement. Anchor it in securely, okay? That satisfies the requirement that it can be moved after the season or at a later time. And move the move the bigger one and put it at the park shop for a later use someday. It'll find a home.
There's the motion. Do we have a second?
So for the additional cost go to a portable, I'll have to come back for an additional appropriation then.
I know.
We have
Okay.
a motion. Do we have a second? We don't have a second. We don't have a motion.
I mean,
Tough
okay,
crowd.
hang on. So you want to pull out the old one and save it?
Well,
Doesn't
what
it
else
have
are we gonna do with
footings?
it? Well, you'll have
Concrete
to, yeah, you have to take the footings
attached
off.
to the metal?
Yeah, you'll have to take the footings off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the motion to move the backstop 50 feet?
It is not.
That's part of the motion.
The motion is to remove the existing one, put it in storage, replace it with a portable, and then move it the distance accommodating the infraction.
Move it 50 feet farther into the park,
Away from the property?
away from the property.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm sick of it. Okay, any opposed?
Yeah.
Nay, 2 nays, good. Okay, 3-2. Let's move on. Good God.
I hear their ideas.
I know.
Really?
Okay, now, item 7, discussion on water rates. Okay, before we start this one, I want everyone to get one thing straight here, please. No personal attacks on anything or anybody. You have an issue, I want to hear about it. I don't want to hear you complain about personal things with anybody. I'd just like this to be informational, so we can address the issues we have, look at some options that we can do to remedy these problems, and not go through a traumatic experience with everybody hating each other, okay? Let's start with that. All right, come to the podium, please give us your name, and present your case in terms of the water enterprise, whatever feelings you have. All right, it's open for discussion. Does anybody want to come up and speak? Here we go.
Danny Fox, 1510 Adriana. I'd like to make a request
Go ahead.
before you open up to the public.
Sure.
I'd like to hear what the plan is from the city in regards to the water rate issues.
Well, thank
Be-
you.
Before,
I'm gonna
before,
overrule you. I want to hear what they have to say, so we can figure out what our options might be.
well, I'm just requesting the options that you may have already
I don't think
laid out.
we're not setting any
Okay,
options.
good, good.
All right. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, so would you please come up and present your discussion regarding the water enterprise? Again, no personal attacks on anything or anybody.
I'll do my best.
If you don't, I'm gonna take away your car keys.
Dave Willis, 425 Sultana Way.
All right.
I'm assuming that we're looking at raising water rates again in some way?
We
or-
did. We
Okay.
have.
My concern, we need a well, as I understand, mandated by the state, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Now, don't take this personally, or I'm not getting on anybody, but earlier today, the vice president was over in Oakland, and she was talking about water being vital to California and the infrastructure and all that. And I'm thinking, to help us out, we're eventually going to need a water pipe from the Woodward Reservoir to attach into our lines here. And since the U.S. government, the people back, and I refer to it, again, I apologize, the District of Criminals, they are considering a $2 trillion infrastructure budget. And I'm thinking we could encourage our local representative, Mr. Harder, to, hey, we could use 10 or 12 million of that to help put in our pipe, and therefore not cost this city anything. Because if they're gonna do infrastructure somewhere else, I don't see where our water pipe is any less important than anybody else's. So if we could get to our congressman, and then if we could get that water pipe in, the money that we have backed up for the well, once our water pipe is in at the expense of federal taxpayers, then we could go ahead and drill a backup well should it become necessary, but we will already have some of the money. And who knows, we could hit the government up for a backup well too while we're at it.
Well, thank you for your opinion.
Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Very good. Is there anyone else like to come up to speak? Please do.
My name is Tommy Joyce. I'm First Mission Court in Escalon. I reviewed my bills from last year, coming to this year, and God, I don't believe this. My bill went up $6. Let's see, it went up, my bill went up 28 cents on the garbage, 12 cents on from the December bill to the January bill to the November bill. The other ones went up 12 cents a gallon from December to, from the November bill to January. And the fixed cost went up $4.74 a month. That's just the one portion of the water bill. That's one Starbucks a month is what somebody's going to be losing by raising when you raise the water rates to $4.74. We definitely need the water. SSJ's ID is SSJ, South San Joaquin Irrigation District. Bob Schultz had pushed for this for a long time to get our water. We got shafted by the city of Ripon because they said they didn't want it, and now they want it. So, but when they said they didn't want it, we had the money in there, and then I think they gave the money back. But now we got to go out to Dodge Road, and that's the whole thing. If we don't go with South San Joaquin Irrigation District and get their water, in about 20 years we're going to be going around like this. Look where we can find the water. Where are we going to find the water? The water rates were frozen for 20 years, and nobody was concerned. Then we had the big raise in 2015-16 in that area, and everybody all of a sudden got in an uproar. Where's our rates? If things were looked after during that 20 years, we wouldn't be in this position right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. Okay, is there anyone else?
So, Mayor, before we go to somebody else, staff did receive a letter in regards to this matter, so I would like to read that as public comment. Dear Escalon City Council members, it is becoming more difficult to retire in California because of the high cost of living. The Escalon water increase is one of many financial increases negatively affecting Escalon residents, especially those that have retired. I will address my concerns directly to the impact on retired seniors. Although seniors on Social Security receive a minor cost of living raise annually, the increase does not even come close to covering the ever-increasing cost to live in California. I realize that rising costs and state regulations are affecting our city. Therefore, the city must move the cost onto residents. However, I hope raising rates is not the first action taken in order to obtain the necessary funds to maintain our water system. Raising rates is always the easiest way to cover costs, but if there are other avenues that can be considered, I implore this council to research those alternatives. If water rates need to be raised, then consideration needs to be given to seniors on fixed incomes who may be struggling to pay for basic utilities, food, home expenses, and all the various other expenses which continue to increase. I appreciate the current senior discount offered by the city. However, if the water increases to remain, the council needs to increase discount given to seniors. Unfortunately, notices inserted in our bills are not always read, which is the fault of the customer. There is so much junk mail received, most people, in my opinion, simply open their bill and pay it without reading the flyer. The flyer is usually tossed with the envelope. Shame on us, but I am thankful that via the Facebook Escalon group, I heard about this issue in the upcoming April 5th meeting. I will not attend the meeting as I'm not comfortable with the COVID-19 issue still present. I hope this email letter suffices to voice my opinion for the April 5th meeting. Escalon is a city where residents help one another. Our city council members are part of this community and work hard to address the needs of all residents. I thank city staff and elected council members for taking a second look at the water increase. Pat Lesage in Escalon.
Very nice. Okay, now, anyone else like to come up and speak?
Frank Rodriguez, 1731 Sanchez, and I kind of agree with Pat. I'm on a limited income. I'm a disabled combat vet. Every little penny counts. We're in a big recession. If we could cut any kind of corners, we can. I'm a single dad, and just trying to do as best I can. And I would try to look for any other opportunities than trying to raise rates. I would like to see something like that happen.
Thank you, Frank. All right, anyone else? Please come up here and tell us, please, whatever you have on your mind.
Good evening. My name is Marilyn Boyle. I live at 2311 Yosemite. I moved to Escalon 9 years ago. And since then, my water, trash, sewage rate has doubled. And I understand there's issues that have to be taken care of, 20 years of no care, I understand all that. But it is a huge increase into our budgets, our fixed income budgets. We have done pretty much everything we can do to reduce the amount of water that we use. Recently, just had a lot of yard work done, put it under gravel. 2/3 of my yard is now not watered, and I'm not sure what else I can do. We have water flow restrictors. So maybe if there's more education, more things you can tell us how to conserve water, but I never get out of that first tier. I'm pretty sure never get out of that first tier. But yet the raising rates does cause a problem. So somehow find a balance between what you need and for those of us who, are paying this, because, 100% increase in 9 years is pretty significant. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Kurt Danziger, 389 Noni. And I like those last two comments regarding people on fixed incomes and what can we do. But we have to set a standard. People are going to have to, council's going to have to come up with a standard that they're going to approve if you look to subsidize people's water rates. You're going to have to prove they meet a certain level. Just like we have to prove that we're a DF community and we can't get grants or loans from the state's revolving drinking water fund. So I would caution just the few people that are on fixed incomes in this city. I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income. $4 or $5 a month doesn't bother me. I like turning on that faucet and seeing that water come out of there at the same pressure, it's clean, and we're drinking it. We didn't maintain and operate the system properly, now we're paying for it. It's a gut punch. Nobody likes that. But the council has approved these increases, knowing that now, and I think you should be commended for it, not offended by it. I want to address an issue I think is going to come up here before long, and that's the SSJID water line. Back in 2003, the city council approved the funding for our buy-in into that line. They didn't do that for a revenue generation source. They did that for the future of the city and to tie into that water line. And that's what the majority of all of us that show up here to these meetings and go to the workshops and listen to the consultants every 5 years, listen to and understand. If you don't want to show up and then you get a water bill, you know, that's tough luck. But the city has had workshops. We've had 218 votes. People have had an opportunity to come in, write in, say they don't like it. We had 22 people at the last vote that opposed out of 2,500 connections. I mean, what does that tell you? So now that we need a new well, we need a new well. And the way that we pay for it, we got to raise rates. If you want to take that money out of the SSJID fund that we got from Tracy and put $750,000 into $1.5 million well, you're still going to have to get a loan. You're still going to have to raise the rates. And what you've done is jeopardize the future of any city council to tie into that system. I'm just vehemently opposed to even thinking about that. That we're not in that kind of situation where we've got to even consider that now. I looked at the consulting information here about loans. We all wonder, especially you, Mayor Alves, and rightly so, why can't we get a loan? Well, we're told that the median household index income is too high. And so I started thinking about that, and I go, how do they come up with that? And so I started calling the state drinking water funds. I called the federal government. And the MHI is based on the American Survey, the ASC. It's a random selection from the census that was taken. And in California, out of over 40 million people, the census used the information for this particular item, drinking water, from 3.5 million people. Which 3.5 million people? In our community here, that'd be 78 people. So who were those people? Were they farmers? How do we end up with an MHI that's so high? And by the way, the MHI for the state of California now is $781 higher than Escalon. And because we have less than 3,300 connections, we're lower than 10,000 in population, we're a small water agency. So that number is important. If we can find out who they surveyed and how they came up with that number, I think we may be lowering it. And it's changed from the time that this study was conducted. I'm not going to go into all of it. I watched 60 Minutes last night, and they ran a story about West Palm Beach and how the billionaires and millionaires were usurping the system and getting all these vaccinations ahead of the poor people in West Palm Beach. And in a blink of an eye, they said, well, you know, the MHI for these poor people in West Palm Beach was $28,000. And I said, that's a devastated community. And then they turned around and said that MHI for West Palm Beach millionaires and billionaires was $78,000. And I rewound that thing 3 times. I said, what? The numbers are skewed. I don't know how they actually came. The people at our state don't know who was sampled. And in fact, I've had comments from them. When I find out, I'll call them and tell them. But I don't think we ought to give up on the grant process yet. I don't think that's a done deal. I'm going to continue to keep on looking at it until I find out, you know, whether it's right or it's wrong. But I'm vehemently opposed to attacking that money as a short-term fix for rates. The rates are going to go up regardless. The O&M on that system is going to have to be maintained. And when the water rates actually do what they're supposed to do, which is help you conserve water, guess what? You're going to get less revenue into the water enterprise fund, and rates are going to have to go up to meet the costs. So it's a balance. If everybody stops using the water, you still got to maintain the system. You know, when everybody went solar, you still got to pay for those lines in the sky and the people that work on them. You know, the rates are going to have to go up to pay for those things. So it's a balancing thing, and that's what you guys get paid to do and look at those things there. I think you've made the right decisions, and I hope you continue to make the right decisions. You're never going to make everybody happy, but we got to maintain our infrastructure. It's what makes the city and makes any city. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else? All right, we're gonna bring it back to the count, well, we got another taker. All right, let's have some more.
Be impatient, see if anyone else wants to speak.
It doesn't look like it.
Yep. Danny Fox, 1510 Adriana. As it was mentioned earlier, this water with SSGID started in 2003. That was the plan. So the money that was brought in during that course of time was close to $1 million, and that money is gone, spent on other things, not SSGID. In 2015, the council voted and passed the water rate increase fund after a study to raise the rates, because rates had not been raised for 25 years at that point in time. 2015 to 2021, the city manager and the council goals for each budget. Number one item out of 4 or 5, it resounded every time and consistent, be looking for ways to hook up to SSJID surface water. Past mayors and council members look beyond their tenure to the future generations for reliable source of water. Since that time, 2014, 2015, all agencies within California are faced with complying with the Groundwater Sustainability Act. That's going to be controlled by the state Water Resources Control Board. And the key word, control board. So they're going to lay down and set down cities and municipalities and throughout the state how much water they can pump and take out of the ground, and they're going to be regulated and be able to comply with the regulations. But now I hear that there's a little bit of talk to obliterate that saved SSGID funds, because never going to happen in my lifetime, where that pipeline is never going to be put in. My opinion is that ideal is literally backwards thinking and would put the city back 6, 7, or 8 years. The issue of water goes beyond me or anyone else in this room or watching via the conference. Goes beyond our lives, our tenure. It's got to be out into the future. Just in the city council meeting tonight, I heard the word future thinking on different issues 2 to 3 times. So it's imperative, I believe, to continue to be forward thinking and to rely solely on groundwater, which is now controlled by the Department of Water Resources Control Board. That tells me the city's putting all eggs in one basket, AKA groundwater only. I think it's better to be diversified, whether or not it's in your personal life and in business. Diversify, have 2 baskets, SSGID surface water and groundwater. The opportunity for future Escalon residents to have access to groundwater and surface water is forward-thinking, sensible, and a prudent thing to do. I don't think anyone in this room or out on the conference, if they have a family and they've been saving money for one of their children to go to college, and at some point in time they say, you know what, hon, I don't think that's never going to happen. I don't think Sally or Bill or the daughter, I don't think they're ever going to go to college. I think we ought to spend that money, lower a little bit on debt on the new car or our house, because they're never going to go to college. That's backwards thinking. City has an opportunity to have surface water abundantly and be able to fairly regulate the groundwater. The city sells the allotment over 2,030 acre feet a year. Over the last 10 years, the average water that we pumped out of the ground was 1,500 acre feet. So I think it's very good that we have enough water that we eventually out in the future. It may not happen in my lifetime, may not happen in anyone's lifetime that's in this room, but the whole thing about, I think when people get into public service and on the council, it isn't about what I can accomplish in my tenure. You have to be thinking about the future for the next generation to set the stage and the groundwork and the path for a better life for the citizens, residents of Escalon. I ask and I urge the city council to stay the course, remain committed to the goal of someday connecting to SSGID surface water, as they did those before us and you. Again, this is about what you as an elected body leave to future Escalon residents and their generation, rather than depleting a long-time goal for former mayors and former councils. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else? I'm gonna close it.
We need to ask if there's anybody on go-to meeting that would like to speak. I'm not seeing anybody on go-to meeting.
We're gonna bring it back, but I've got a lot I'd like to say. To begin with, I'm one of those people who said and totally agree that we'll never see that water pipeline ever. And there's a multitude of reasons why. I've heard testimony this evening that's the same testimony I've heard year after year after year. And I hear it from the same people year after year after year. But what's interesting to me is the same people that bring this up are the same people that are retirees from government. And I always wonder what the angle is here, and I can't figure it out. But it's interesting. The most stringent or strong opposition to moving money from that reserve to help the taxpayer comes from ex-government employees. I don't understand the connection yet, but I noticed that, and it's kind of odd. Now, when I was on the council in the beginning, and that was quite some time ago, we had accepted the fact that we borrowed money from the general fund to help the community. We bought a water municipality that was a derelict, and the state mandated at the time we bought it, we pay a premium for it because that was the mandate. So we bought a beat up car, we had to put a new engine in and tires. So we didn't have the money at the time. So we borrowed that money from the general fund. We borrowed like $450,000, somewhere in that ballpark. And then we also did some other loans and things to help improve the water district because it was in pretty tough shape. Over the years, we were audited. And every year at the end of the audit, they told us we should be paying back the money that we borrowed to the general fund because it's just a procedural type thing. The councils I were on, which two of these individuals that even spoke were also on those councils, decided it wasn't something we were going to do. It was for the betterment of the community. We borrowed the money from the general fund, which is the community's money, and we gave it to the community to benefit the community. Over the years, we've kept the water rates low and reasonable. And unfortunately, we got behind on what needed to be done. Again, no good deed goes unpunished. I let you speak. I didn't interrupt you. I made no slight comments. I don't appreciate the lack of respect. Okay? Let me finish. So, anyway, here we are today in a situation where water has impacted a lot of the community. I received 160 plus inquiries and complaints about the water rates. In all fairness, the water rates are what they are because they need to be to pay for the infrastructure we need. But there's also other options we could explore to lessen the impact. The opposition to the $700,000 in reserve is one of those options. That money could be put forth to help buy the new well, and with money coming in from SSJI, it would help pay the payment. Now, this is not something we do for 100 years. This is something we could do for the duration of the loan of the new well, which would offset a burden that this town's, a lot of people are experiencing. Another option is, in addition to that, or by itself, is to raise a sales tax temporarily 1 cent, which would give us somewhere in the range anywhere from $250,000 to $400,000 in a 2-year with a sunset where it couldn't be renewed without less than 2/3 of the registered voters in this community. So it wouldn't roll over every year like some things we've done, but it would have a sunset. Water is critical, without a doubt. There is no doubt in my mind. That's why in California we have 11 desalination plants that are operating off the ocean right now. That's why there's 11 more slated to be put in. That's why Israel and countries like Dubai have desalination plants. They are costly. Yes, absolutely. They produce 50 million gallons a day. Is that enough to substantiate the investment? I guess it is, because a lot of people are doing it. If San Francisco put a desalination plant in, it would alleviate the problem of us taking our money from our water from Hetch Hetchy to the Bay Area. Another thing to keep in mind, if water is to a crisis where it's going to be, where everybody's panicking and freaking out, there's going to be all sorts of regulations jammed down our throat. They're going to come in way of farmers not being able to grow crops that they want. It's going to come into, like Tracy, for example. Tracy buys our water today. Let's suppose there's a water crisis of unlimited parallel. Do you think for a minute the city of Escalon, with its 7,000, 5,000, or excuse me, 10,000 approximately, is going to win water over a city that's like Tracy? It's not going to happen. We could use another well. We're in the deepest part of the aquifer. And I think we need to explore those options. Those options are using the 700,000, using the money from there to get ourselves back on our feet, get rolling, and then we can revert back to the savings. In about 3 years, I think we should probably pay off that well, and then boom. Let it stay there forever, but there will never, in my opinion, be a water line to the city of Escalon. Today's price is $8 to $15 million. We have 750 of it. We can't get a grant, we can't get a loan. Where do you think that's going to come from? So, I've said my piece. Councilman Bellinger, you're welcome to your turn.
I'd like to learn more about the actual cost of the project. I know, Tammy, we've mentioned and had discussions of having someone actually get the number a little closer from 8 to 15. It's kind of a large gap there.
Yeah, so when we
Significant amount.
So when we did the last water study, the project was estimated to be $8 million. In future dollars, it was estimated to be just over $10 million. But recently I had notified the council that I was entering an agreement with Pace Advanced Water Engineering, who is going to be evaluating where the original alignment for that connection is, and if there's a more cost-efficient way to connect that line. So we've just entered into that agreement, and I want to say they gave me like a 3 to 6 month timeline to get that through. I've already talked with SSJID. Pace has some ideas, so the project cost could change based on if the alignment changes and just their evaluation of it.
Again, what's that going to cost us for the consulting?
It's $15,000.
15 grand. And there's no guarantee they're going to come back with anything more suitable or unsuitable. But again, we have a situation here. We have people that are impacted. Let's talk about solutions to help them.
I think this is one of those solutions, Ed. I think you're dismissing a project that is actually considered to be vital to this community. That's a difference of opinion, Ed.
Yeah, I
I'm sorry,
agree.
I'm gonna say I've got a difference opinion of yours. I'm sorry.
Well, don't
But-
be sorry. You're entitled to your opinion.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
That being said, if it's 15 million, that's a different number than 8. The other thing is, I don't think we're locked out of getting a loan for this project. I thought the water rate study examined that and determined the weight increases were gonna be able to cover a payment on a loan for that project. That being said, how much money do we have to have in the bank as starter money to prove to the bank that we are prepared for that project, should it come down? So I'm not sure we should be touching that 700 grand and leaving it in the bank to make sure that we can show the seriousness of our resolve to get that project pushed through. If it's an $8 million project and by the time it comes around 3 to 5 years, 1.2, that's a sizable investment on an $8 million or a $10 million project to show we're serious about that. Secondarily, as the state goes, right now, it's recommended that we diversify. When have they ever backed up of a recommendation and didn't decide to make that a mandatory requirement? I don't see that it's gonna go away whether we want it to or not. I think we have to plan for that future potential. It's not gonna change our current rates to our ratepayers at the current moment. Whether we decide to take that 700 and throw it against the well, it's not gonna change the rate structure one bit. It may shorten the window of a loan for that. It's just moving money around for which loan you wanna pay more on. Either way, we've got the same level of debt for the new well that's already in place and in the works versus the 8 to 12 million we go there. So we either go into another project with less money and more debt in the future, or we work it the other way. So I don't think we can dismiss this project, in my opinion.
I'm not dismissing the project, I'm telling that it's gonna be there for a long time, and that we have an opportunity to help resolve some of our issues here to get us back on our feet, and then we can resume the dream of the water well.
I believe our rate structure that we have in place takes care of that obligation in a timely manner, and it's sufficient for us, so
How
that's my
about
opinion.
this? What recommendation can you give me to help some of these people that are struggling with water?
Well, I can tell you that when I first came to Escalon, I was shocked at how cheap the rates were 13 years ago when I moved back. I was in Turlock, and at the time when I moved back, it was half of what I was paying in Turlock. And you look at the rate structure in the report that we've got, we're what, 4th out of 10 or 12 communities in the local area?
Right.
I did some research with some of my coworkers that work out at the winery that live in other cities in the area. We are still cheaper or close to them.
I
So
appreciate what you're saying.
it's not any cheaper anywhere else in this valley, and they're all experiencing the same struggles that we have.
So, do you have any suggestions in terms of the people that are having problems paying that we could help them with?
I would say that, you know, we've bounced around the idea of fixed incomes or retired or senior compensation for that. I think that's something you can look at. It's gonna be hard to qualify that based on property owner versus renters versus that. There's some diciness there, I think, in qualifying those ratepayers, and I think that's probably why we don't have it, is my guess.
Yeah, so our current senior discounts are on garbage because that comes out of the general fund. You cannot reduce rates in an enterprise fund such as water or sewer where other ratepayers are supplementing their bills. So if you were going to do some kind of senior discount in your water or your sewer, then it would have to be money would have to come from from general fund or some other source to cover that. Other taxpayer or ratepayers cannot cover those.
Okay.
Councilman Crummage.
So I appreciate Mayor Alves' enthusiasm and desire to find ways to lower the burden on our citizens, and I agree with him on that. My issue with the water pipeline connection with SSJID is that I really do think it is something that's going to come back in a big way. I spoke personally with the general manager of SSJID about this issue and about what's coming down the pipeline, no pun intended, and the groundwater issue in California, I mean, it's pretty stark. The fact that we did buy into that was long before my time, but it seemed to have showed a great deal of wisdom on the part of the leadership within the council. Yes, it's expensive. I've looked at various ways. I've called a number of different financial agencies about this kind of thing. What does it take to get a loan? And it's possible. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't want to increase the burden on the community any more than anybody up here. And I can assure everybody, nobody wants to raise rates on anybody. It's just a matter of what we have to pay for, what our big plan is down the line. So, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Swift.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised because I understood this was going to be a discussion from the public's input on water rates versus our opinions.
Rebutting that.
You know, so, well, and, personally speaking, I mean, I agree. There's a balance out there that I think one has to seek with any kind of a rate structure. And you know that you're going to be affecting different people differently based on their ability to pay. And you try to do everything you possibly can to avoid that and minimize it. I think part of the reason I think this particular water plan This 5-year water plan was passed a year ago in 2020, 5-0, was because I think that was the closest that we could possibly get to seeking that balance between accomplishing all of our goals in terms of our own infrastructure, our own autonomy, so we would not be dependent upon outside agencies, outside developers, anybody else. We can chart our own course. And this water rate structure is gonna go a long way towards doing that. Yes, it's gonna impact people, you know, and that's one thing you always take into consideration. I will say regarding the South San Joaquin Irrigation District, and with all due respect, I know that, you know, the thought out there is mentioned that, okay, most of these people, they're retired, you know, they got some money. I'm not too sure if I'm ever gonna retire, and I work my tail off every day, and I still support, just like these people out here support, hooking up that pipeline and keeping that 700,000 in that fund for that purpose down the road. You know, there are some times where, yeah, you do need to ask yourself, am I gonna see this in my lifetime? I don't know, but that's not the idea. That's for future generations to decide. You know, we have reaped the benefits of the decision makers on this dais generations ago. I think the first one that comes to my mind is the growth ordinance in this town. How many people asked in the late 70s, you can't do that. You can't be thinking that like that. No, it's not gonna happen. Well, they did it. And you know what? Thank God that they did it, because we're all reaping the benefits to this day. And I think we need to be doing the same thing, be looking into the future. Not just one generation, not just 2 generations, 3 generations and beyond. We owe that to them. And that's how I feel on the subject.
Very good. Pro Tem?
You know, I think it's been said pretty well by other council members tonight. You know, there are certain things we have control over, and when we start talking about the water and sewer rates, those are done through a process that we have to follow, and we've followed those processes. One of the things you might want to consider is if we have control over garbage rates and we can negotiate garbage rates with the provider, that we look for offsets in our garbage rates for the seniors that would offset any attendant increase in water or sewer. That might be a way to kind of give it a zero sum for those seniors out there that are struggling. You know, we're always looking for options. We're looking for ways to try and take care of the citizens of this community. And we are members of the community. So when we look at rates, we look at rates as well, they're coming out of our pocket too. So we need to make sure that we're very mindful of the decisions that are being made here. We also have to balance that because we are required to provide certain services, and if we fail to provide those services, the community would be here asking for our heads. So you have to balance the ability to provide drinkable water to the community with the rates that you pay for that. I believe that the surface water pipeline is going to be necessary. And I think the investment in attaching to SSJID is one of the major goals that this city should continue to try and achieve. There's just too much going on in the state with groundwater sustainability. It's never been regulated before, but now groundwater is going to be regulated. There's going to be additional fees that come along with that. So we have no idea if groundwater is going to continue to be the cheapest source of water or not. So I think we need to continue to move down that road to look for ways to fund it, make sure that we're not putting an undue burden on the ratepayer. The rates are what they are. We followed the process. We try and make sure that people are aware of any rate discussions and try and make sure that it's inclusive and that all the input from the community is taken. But I can rest assured that the rates that we're looking at are based on needs and providing a vital service to the community. There's no fat to trim, there's no excess in there. And we'll be able to look at them again. This was 2020, I believe, was the last time we looked at it. It's a 5-year process, each year, we look at those rates, and we have the option of not implementing the increases that are set forth in that process. So it's looked at every year. Every year, we evaluate where we are with the rates, what are we getting for that money, what is it being used for, and the community has access to that, and if there's ever questions, they can get a hold of us, they can talk to the city, they can talk to any one of us, and voice their concerns or ask for clarification. So the process will continue. I think the process has been transparent and open. The system is in need of certain repairs. We can look for low-interest loans like we did for the current well that's going to go in. There will be some debt service associated with that, and we'll continue to look for ways to finance a pipeline to make sure that that is done efficiently and provides those options to make sure we can continue to provide vital water and drinkable water to this community. So that's all I got.
That's pretty good. All right, I appreciate everyone's opinion. While I don't agree with it, it's your right and mine, so that's what makes the world go around.
Can I get up and say one more thing?
You can wait till I'm finished. I'd be love to have you, but let me finish mine, please. Thank you. State mandates this well. We're in a pandemic. People have lost their jobs. People have been out of work. They've sat at home trying to figure out what their future's like. And the state mandates a new well. Why aren't we more concerned with going to the state and ask for extension of time? I mean, this is insane. We're gonna have a sewer rate increase, a garbage rate increase, and it just seems to be so overwhelming for people. I personally can afford these things, but it's not right that those who can't, we have to come up with some sort of an option to create less impact on these people. The taxing we talked a little bit about. Mark, is it possible that we could have a sales tax designed to put money in an infrastructure account for water or sewer or both? Well, actually, water is the most important right now.
Yeah, you could put that for infrastructure.
Or just water, or can it be, or does it have to be for all of them?
I would have to look into that, but
I think it depends upon how you pass the tax.
yes.
So if you pass it as a general tax, then you have control over it. If you pass it as a special tax, then it has to be identified where it's going to go. And the difference between a general tax and a special tax has a lot to do with how it's approved. So our recent sales tax measures S was a special tax because it was identified specifically for our public law enforcement, and it had to pass by the 67.33% in order for it to be approved. Had it been a general tax where we could spend the money generally and not identified, it only needs the 50+1.
Yeah, but that'll never happen. The people aren't gonna approve a tax.
Which is why we went with the special tax for the
Exactly.
public
And I would
law
recommend
enforcement.
that we consider the sales tax for the water infrastructure in a way that would lessen the burden on the future of the people in this community. Now, is there a possibility, because this money is being gathered for this infrastructure, is a provision in there we could put in there for seniors where they weren't as impacted?
In the sales tax measure?
No, in the money that came in from the sales tax measure, the money was set aside into an infrastructure for water. Is there a way we could state in that procedure or
It's going how it's structured. If it's going in through into the general fund.
it will go into a special fund? I don't think, nobody in this town or any town I know of is gonna give you general fund money. That's not gonna happen.
So if you do the special tax, you could say, yes, 90% of it is going towards infrastructure, and we're gonna use 10% to assist with those seniors and give them their senior discount.
Okay.
Because that money would be that is a general tax, and it's not, so none of the other ratepayers of that rate structure are covering that.
Okay. Well, that's something I'd like to explore.
You know, it's interesting, I just want to point out, one of things that are happening in Washington, this infrastructure discussion. One of the sticking points currently in Washington is whether it can be used for infrastructure besides roads. And one of the plans is, yes, you can use it for things such as water infrastructure.
Sure.
It's left to be seen what's going to come out.
Of course.
But I just wanted to throw it out there that
Like it.
there's.
We are possibly in line for some revenue from federal, I assume. I had talked to Harder
For
about it.
I'm sorry, what was that for?
What's happening currently for the infrastructure package, what was already passed.
Right.
The city has been designated approximately, it was 1.1 million, 1.3.
1.4.
So but that cannot go towards certain infrastructure such as the water, unfortunately.
What is the 1.4 for?
So it's for it's recovery, so it can replace lost revenues during this time. That is part of the money that I was talking about that we could use for potentially Chamber Nation economic development kind of things. They have not came out with all the full guidelines on that. I still think that it's not clear to me where it all can be used at this time.
What about requesting some sort of a extension of time from the state, Mark? What's the possibility?
We could always ask, but
Yeah.
I'm not in with the process that you guys are currently doing. By the way, my office did present staff with a report regarding what we can use that 1.4 for.
Right.
So if you haven't got a copy, you can get a copy of the
appreciate that.
memorandum that my office had put out regarding the CARES Act money.
Sure.
Not the money that's currently being discussed for infrastructure.
What I was thinking too is, yeah, exactly. There was one other question I had for you, but now I forgot it, which is typical. All right, so I would like to be able to look into the possibility of creating some sort of a proposal for a sales tax increase for 2 years and anywhere from half to 1 cent. And then, like to structure it, then put it out to the public and get some feedback. What do you think? Is it doable?
Well, all you're doing is asking staff just to prepare some kind of.
Some kind of a program or some kind of a tax incentive, yeah. Not incentive, excuse me, some sort of a tax increase that would benefit the water. And then also in that provision, have money there for the seniors that couldn't afford water increases or were in a situation where it was becoming a negative impact on them, that we could somehow have that money available to them.
So you're asking for staff to prepare something that
Something
they
like
could
that,
then
yes.
go out to the public and get more input like you're doing tonight?
Yes.
About the rest of us.
What about, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I know, but usually that's a consensus thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Oh, it's,
Councilman Swift.
I don't think it's a bad idea either. I'm just.
I wasn't concluding.
Wow.
That was
you
my
know.
recommendation. I understand the procedure. All right. Okay. So, Councilmember David, excuse me, Bellinger.
Before I speak, there was somebody that had something to say. I want to give
That
somebody that
was,
opportunity.
yeah.
So I'm gonna hold off on my comments and let them speak.
All right, go ahead. Let's come to the podium, please.
Again, Dave Willis, 425 Sultana. Ed, you said something about the government workers here a little bit ago.
I did.
I took a bit of exception to that because I have learned a lot when I worked for the City of Santa Clara Water Department. The City of Santa Clara, years ago, made plans. Way before I was born, they made plans. Some of that plans was when the Hetch Hetchy pipe went through the City of Santa Clara. They said, hey, yeah, you can come through, but we want 2 taps in the future. It's on what they call the north side of Highway 101, which bisects Santa Clara. For years and years and years, nothing out there except cow. They had a dairy out there and not much else. Then they put in the Great America Park, and they started developing all these electronics places out there. And the City of Santa Clara said, oh, we're going to tap in. San Francisco said, no, you're not. We showed them the paperwork. One tap went in. They still have the ability to make one more tap, but they had planned way back when that Hetch Hetchy system was being put in that they could. and they finally made the tap. They also, knowing that the wells in Santa Clara had a lifetime, they bored 2 large holes under 101 and put pipes to feed the rest of the city. That was planning years and years in advance. So yes, you're right. We might not see that pipeline coming in, but let's make plans for that pipeline for the future. Let's not give up on it. It's a possibility. And like I said earlier, and you mentioned, that $2 trillion that they're talking about back there, I think we should ask our congressman, hey, we need that for our future. We need a water line now. The sooner we get a water line, I think the better.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, well, let's go bug him.
Just a minute. The lady in the back, then you, Marty.
I'm Marilyn Boyle, 2311 Yosemite Avenue. I just have a cautionary tale of unintended consequences on the special taxes. I'm not against them, but I did a lot of studying when I was working on my master's degree on this very subject, and the town I lived in also had one. And they took out a 5-year special tax for a Parks and Recreation Department. Within 5 years, they were the envy of the county. So it was reapproved. But in the meantime, the city kind of started going broke. And they took the money that they had allocated for Parks and Recreation and took it out. And when it came back to renew 5 years later, people were used to what a good system it was and didn't think they had to fund it. Well, that city now does not have a Parks and Recreation Department. Okay, and this had so unintended consequences. And it wasn't that much of a sales tax increase, it was 0.5%. And I don't know if this is coincidental or not, but in that town there had been 3 car dealerships and a main street that thrived. There are now no car dealerships in the town. They moved 6 miles away, just outside of town, and the whole town is boarded up. I mean, there's nothing there.
What's the town?
Brawley, California. It was a thriving town, and it is now probably one of the lowest ranked towns in the state. But it's on that list of places you don't want to be. But anyway, 20 years ago, it was where you wanted to be. So anyway, I just said, unintended consequences, so think those through, because I'm not against those taxes, I think they're great. But the shorter the better, so people don't get too comfortable with them.
Well, here's the deal. I am trying to explore options.
No, I know.
I don't have all the answers. And I'm just trying to kind of figure out what it is we can do to help. And I'm just doing what I can to get there. I'm hoping that maybe it'll stimulate some other ideas.
Yeah, no, I said those are great ideas, but just watch out for what happens down the road with
I
those.
think we're all aware of what happens in a lot of those situations. And one you just quoted us is common.
Yeah, okay.
So there was a message in chat from someone that a sales tax is also unfair to businesses that have already dealt with the water raises themselves as businesses and possible residents, as well as trying to survive a pandemic. So just as public comment, I wanted to share that.
We're gonna have tons of that. All right, go ahead, Marty.
Just one comment, follow up on Councilmember Legero's. We don't know what the state is always going to do. They're pretty unpredictable. And what if they lowered the rate on arsenic in the water, cut the rate in half or whatever? We probably don't have, I don't even know if we have any wells that would meet if they did. And that could easily happen. Or other, who knows, some other metals or whatever in the water. And so then you'll be wishing that you were hooked up to the SSJD pipeline.
Well, you can wish and you can hope, and you can't predict every possible situation. I mean, that's life. That's what we live in. Okay, back to the proposal I had. Councilman Swift, would you like to speak to that?
One thing I want to point out, you mentioned a sales tax, and then I read that comment, and I've heard that before with businesses. That's a pass-through, or should be a pass-through.
Pretty much.
And the advantage of a sales tax is that it captures that 1/2 cent, 1 cent from everybody spending money in Escalon.
That go through our town.
That goes through the town, yeah. So it's not just solely on the people here. It is everybody who goes through, everybody who passes through, everybody who lives out in the country, everybody's going to Yosemite. okay, or wherever they go. So that's why sometimes a sales tax isn't that bad a thought, because it captures a lot of money that is not from our local pockets as well. So,
Well, I'm not a big fan of taxes, but I can't think of any other options to find some relief for some of these people. That's all I'm trying to do. And I just don't know what the answers are, and I'm hoping that through debate and discussion, we'll come up with something. So I'm out there struggling to find it, but I don't have an answer. Okay, Councilman Bellinger?
Yeah, I'd be open to exploring that option. I know we had some struggles with the law enforcement one that we had, wow, must be.
Time to go home. Let's go.
We had some struggles with getting that one passed through for the police department a couple years ago. I think, considering this is hitting everybody's pocketbooks with the rate increases and stuff, we might have a little better turnout on a well-crafted plan for that with sunset and everything. I think we should explore that.
All right, I appreciate that. Councilman Crummage?
I think that talking about water rates in town, I think I've been making a mistake. I really actually need to recuse myself from this entire topic since my house is on a well. I'm not currently on city water, and so I don't think that I actually have a say in any of this. Thank you.
That's interesting. Yeah, okay.
It's just a discussion item.
Yeah,
That,
we're not voting on it.
where there's no vote, but
Yeah.
I
you do
still have
what you
nothing to
feel that's
say.
right.
Vice Mayor Legero?
I'm okay with exploring the sales tax, but, you know, it is something you have to be very cautious about because so you're in town, you've increased the sales tax rate, you go to buy a vehicle, you could eat up whatever savings you might have had in your water rates and sales tax that you pay on the new vehicle. So we are still lower than on the areas around us, as long as we maintain a lower rate than them and we keep it under control and it's short term, I think that's viable to generate some outside money.
I think it's important that we craft it in a way that doesn't fall into the same pitfalls the lady mentioned. We'd have to be very cautious on that. But it is one way we can possibly get some relief for people. I mean, I'm struggling to find a solution. I mean, it's not easy, as you all well know. I mean, so unless somebody's got a crystal ball out there. So anyway, if the council is not opposed to it, I would like to explore the idea and see what we could do with it.
now, to be cautious, to be truthful, I think this water rate structure, obviously we'd be talking about 2022 for that sales tax increase on the ballot. This particular water rate structure, the financing for that well that we have to put in, that financing is dependent upon, they're looking at this 5-year rate increase, right? Incremental increase, right?
The rate study did, yes.
Right, but the financing for that well, they're looking at that. I
It's
mean,
included in
If we
that.
alter that, what are the consequences for obtaining that financing?
Yeah, so we're going through that process right now, and that was one of the reasons why we had to do that rate study was so that we could show the state that we, have rates in place to be able to pay for that well. If we're approved, I don't know if we chose not to take one of the next increases, I don't know if that would affect it. I mean, if you're financially stable and you're choosing not to make the rate increase because you have excess funds or because you've experienced excess revenues or, you know, decreased expenses, whatever it may be, once you're approved, I don't think that could be any consequences as long as you have your reserve, which typically is a 1 to 2 year reserve of that debt service.
Right, and the reason I'm saying that is because, again, I mean, I just got finished supporting the concept of a sales tax increase. That's 2022. You know, whether or not our current rate structure will be affected or not, I mean, we're gonna be revisiting this whole concept, the whole 218 process in 2024.
Yeah, that's when this,
25? Yeah.
March of 2024 is the last rate increase that.
So what I'm saying is that I can see a lot of these actions that we're looking at tonight, and you gotta plan for the future, you know, might actually become more relevant and have a bigger influence in the next structure.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially. So that's just my one caveat, so.
Well, what we're discussing is, what can we do in terms of sending a letter for the state looking for some relief, Mark? Because I think these mandates that the state shoves down our throat are, you know, it's just hard to swallow, no pun intended. It's just, it's crazy. Because our community does not have the cash flow or the financial wherewithal to keep up with a lot of this stuff. I think if we asked them and pled the case.
Are you referencing a certain mandate, or are you referencing the well?
The well.
So the well came about in 2015, I think, is when that came down. So that was well before COVID, and we've been going through this process.
But we haven't accomplished it.
We haven't. We're at the finish line for the funding, and legal review just reviewed our agreement and sent back our comments last week to the state on that agreement. So the funding for that well is right at the finish line right now.
When you say the funding, you're referring to our money or somebody else's money?
We're borrowing money from the state at 1.75%.
1.75, okay.
That's pretty good.
It's a good loan.
Yeah.
What about the other mandates we're stuck with? 1383 or whatever it is, the one?
Well, that's garbage. Yeah, 1383 is the garbage.
I understand what it is.
I mean, like, we've been working with the League of Cities, you know, they've been trying to get the state to prolong when that would have to go active.
Sure.
Doesn't mean that it's not gonna come down the pipeline.
No, I understand
But
that.
the League of California Cities is typically like supposed to be cities' advocates at the legislature, you know, so, you know, pulling on them and your Harder's office or,
It's essentially what lobbyists do.
Yeah.
And that's the point of the League of California,
So we
League of
should take
California
that
Cities.
argument to the League of Cities, what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I know the gentleman that runs our local one here, so I'll ask him.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
Can I make a quick thing? I know I recused myself, but I called Josh Harder's office about a week ago. I called Heath Flora's office. I spoke to somebody. I said, we have a pipeline project. I think that it qualifies for funding from the state. Can you guys do anything for us? I pleaded our case. I made the argument. I've heard nothing back.
Figure on it.
Thanks for making the calls.
So I do have a contact in Harder's office for their grant writing, and I've shared our woes on what we need funding for, and I haven't heard anything back either.
Well, that's unfortunate. Well, we guess we can keep asking, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they look at the grants, and, you know, as was indicated earlier, the median income household, you know, disqualifies us a lot from the grants, but the loans that you can get from the state are typically at that lower interest rate. It's just the process that you have to go through to get that loan is so cumbersome and lengthy. So that is one reason why the well loan has just been taking so long. It's, you send them stuff, oh, but what about this? And you send them this, and then they ask a different question. So it's been a lot of back and forth, but I really feel like we are right there at that finish line with it.
When you say we're right there, we're talking about 6 months, a year?
Oh, I hope within 6 months.
Within 6 months?
Yeah.
All right. All right, I think we beat this up enough. Let's move on. Is there any more discussion, gentlemen? All right, we beat this up. Let's move on to item number 8, consideration of adopting resolution expressing support for actions to further strengthen local democracy, authority, and control as related to local zoning and housing issues. Staff.
So the city council and city manager received an email from Mike Griffins, council member of City of Torrance, regarding city's local control pertaining to land use decision-making. Mr. Griffins is asking for support from other cities to let the state legislature know that cities want to keep land control at the local level. As of March 23rd, this action is being supported by 400 elected officials. Mr. Griffiths has encouraged those that support these efforts adopt the attached resolution that will be presented to our state legislators and other groups to let them know the scope of disapproval throughout California cities. Attached to the staff report is the email from Mr. Griffiths, and proposed resolution. So the city council should consider the adoption of a resolution expressing support for actions to further strengthen local democracy, authority and control as related to local zoning and housing issues. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Councilman Bellinger.
I'm okay with it.
Councilman Crummage.
Yes.
Councilman Swift.
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and I agree, so we're in favor.
Do you want any,
Public
Taken out.
input?
Yes.
Let's have some public input. Anybody interested in commenting on the item number 8? How about on the internet? Anyone on the internet? Okay, then since we have no other input, we'll move forward. Do we need a motion?
Yes.
I'll
Yeah,
accept a motion.
okay. I move that we adopt a resolution expressing support for actions to further strengthen local democracy, authority, and control as related to local zoning and housing issues.
I'll have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. All right, we're gonna go to council communications. We'll start with,
Real quick, before we go to council communications, I need to let the council know that I added the water discussion on here at the request of Mayor Alves. But our practice has been that it would be the consensus of the council to put an item on the agenda. In talking with our legal counsel, there are policies out there that other cities have, so I'm going to look forward to setting a formal policy on how we put items on the agenda.
remember we had 2 people.
Yeah, we haven't had a formal policy, so I'm gonna get some assistance and do that because I didn't follow our past protocol, so I apologize for that. But I just kinda wanted to lay that out there
All
too.
right, good enough. All right, council communications, Councilman Bellinger.
I think I've covered everything I need to cover for the evening.
Councilman Crummage?
Yes. The night is young. I have a couple things. So to finish what I was talking about, the ride-along, it was a great experience. The officers were professional. It was really a great experience to see how they dealt with specific situations, the professionalism, the courtesy they extended to different people, the concern, the discussions I had about caring for the community, what Escalon's all about. Believe it or not, there is more crime that goes on here behind the scenes that we don't see. And I think our police department, thank you Chief Lackey and everybody involved is doing a great job. So I enjoyed that. I have another comment. I think this is one of the most amazing things I ever looked up when it came into, I was looking up development and what it takes, and which I'm going to talk about in 1 second. But the Empire State Building was built in 1 year. And I think that's amazing that back in the day, they could build the Empire State Building, the tallest building in the world, in 1 year. And a huge part of that is that they were not burdened down by red tape, government regulations. So with that being said, I'm going to read this. I prepared it. I'm going to read it. I've created the City of Escalon Senior Housing Initiative. I'm going to read the summary. The City of Escalon is in need of additional senior housing. The options are currently very limited for individuals 55 plus who wish to remain in this community but also wish to sell their homes and realize the hard-earned equity that they have worked for many years. Additionally, entry into this community, either to be close to family or for quality of life, is almost impossible for seniors. The question then is, how do we accomplish this goal? How do we as the City Council use our authority and power to influence this much-needed outcome? To me, the answer is very simple. Let's get out of the way. The Empire State Building. The basis of a free market economy, which thank God we still have somewhat, but unfortunately is slipping away due to overregulation and red tape by government, operates on the premise that individuals, businesses, developers can provide goods and services freely to the consumer. The resulting outcome is either that these entities succeed or they fail, based entirely on whether or not their efforts satisfy the customer. We, the City of Escalon, are the customer in this situation. We are looking to procure senior housing for our community. We know there's a need. We don't seem to understand how to meet that need. We have talked at great lengths. We held numerous meetings. We've even ran our political campaigns on the promise of delivering more senior housing, and yet we don't have any. It's time we try a different approach. We need to lower our fees. The greatest barrier for developers to build senior housing in our town is the cost to do business here. The fees are too high. Let me repeat. The fees are too high. It doesn't make sense to build a high-quality project in this town because the developer won't be able to make a profit. We have numerous fees which inhibit development, and these fees are exorbitant. Development impact fees, connection fees for sewer and water, in lieu fees, school fees, planning and review fees, the list goes on. Now, these fees were created because certain studies show that the city will incur costs associated with new development. I do not disagree with this. I do, however, disagree strongly with the estimation of the costs. My proposal is to lower our development fees for a targeted senior housing project for a set period of time. This will incentivize high-quality senior housing developers to build in our town. They win, we win, everyone wins. So, that's the end of my summary. The initiative details are this. All development impact fees, connection fees, in lieu fees, etc., shall be reduced by 50% for qualified senior housing projects until December 31st, 2025. That will give about 4.5 years for projects to come in for us to evaluate, for them to be approved, and for them to make a profit and for us to benefit. The conclusion, we can get additional senior housing in this community, but it will require us to do more than talk about it. We need an action plan. The City of Escalon Senior Housing Initiative is that plan. We need to support our seniors. We need to lower our fees. We can get this done. We need to get this done. Thank you.
Alrighty, is that it?
That's it. And according to what we need to get this on the agenda, I would like some support from somebody else up here so that we can vote on this, because I don't want this to be something else we just talk about. I want it to be something we vote on.
Okay.
So should I ask for that now?
Mark,
Yeah, he's just asking for consensus.
Yeah.
he wants a consensus or a vote?
A consensus.
Don't I need one more person to say they want to put it on the
No-
agenda?
No votes tonight. It's just about, he's trying to get it on the agenda for
Okay,
next time.
gentlemen, is there a consensus?
It'd probably be better for a consensus of all five. One question, though.
Yeah.
Define qualified. We better spend some time on that.
Define a qualified
The word
applicant?
qualified, yeah.
So what I'm doing in this plan is reducing fees, not all the way, right? We're still going to get a piece of the fee. And I put the qualifier in there, qualified, approved, and those are sort of safety nets for us to determine which project we want, right? So we would determine, I don't have that set yet, that's something for us
Okay,
to
that's-
set.
that's one, yeah.
What is a qualified thing, right? Was it 30 units or 50 units or 10 units? What kind of amenities? I contacted half a dozen luxury senior assisted living agencies around the community, Turlock, Houston, Ripon, Modesto, El Dorado Hills. There's a lot of great options out there for seniors, and this is a nice community people want to live. We can reach out with an incentive package like what I'm proposing. That's what we can go out and incentivize a developer to come in here and build. So that's what I'm proposing.
And one more thing I would ask about that is, at what point we had the meeting last week, and we were talking about all the little cards that we have in our back pocket. Is this a card that we would want to have? This is something we would probably want to consider as part of that proposal, that as we package what kind of senior community we would want. Is this a card that we would give them out front? By the way, if you qualify, then we will reduce, or do we just keep that aside for the negotiation process?
Well, no, I would think if you're putting together a packet of what you want to see in your project, then you would want to put out there if you want to entice more developers to come in and consider it.
That's my idea.
Okay, yeah.
We put this out, it's known, it's on the books, the staff has it as a tool in their toolbox, and then we can contact people and go, here's what we're looking to do, here's our incentive package, now, are you interested, and if so, bring us some plans.
Yeah, and lastly, how could staff compensate for that money that we would be losing in the short run? Because in the long run, we're gonna be getting a senior community here that's gonna help us financially.
That's how we win.
That's another thought too, yeah, but I think it's worth exploring.
So we're not really talking about a lot of projects in a 4.5-year window, considering the open land we have and what we're looking to do. So it would entice someone to potentially come in and look a little more seriously at us. I would agree with that. I think we need to discuss out and hammer out some details, obviously. I think it needs to be not 55, I think it needs to be 62 or 65, my opinion.
I would agree with that.
My opinion.
Person, what do you think?
Qualifying senior is not at 55, it's more of a
Oh,
62 or 65
Okay.
age bracket.
Sure.
For me,
Yeah.
I'm pushing that 55, and I don't consider myself a senior just yet, I'm still working.
So these are all the different things I think Councilmember Crummage wants to actually talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
and
Okay.
get on the agenda
no
so you
problem
could have
having
that
that
discussion.
I want to get this to a vote.
I have no problem with the discussion.
Well, it's consensus, what you're looking for, and you've got one here.
Yeah.
And you've got one
Yep.
there, we got it here, I'm with it, that's fine. We got
So-
5.
So the item that we're gonna put on the agenda is the discussion of your proposal.
To hammer out the details, sure.
Well, it won't we have like a workshop or something like that?
I think we've had enough workshops.
How are you gonna do this without a workshop?
We know what the community wants. I think we're ready.
Yeah, I mean, well, we already scheduled that next senior,
Meeting?
project as,
Can we tie them
Or-
together?
April 26th, is that what
Yeah, I
it was?
think it is.
I believe so.
Yes. So,
What do you think about tying the
Council
two
meeting,
together?
though. That's not a normal council meeting date,
it's
though.
not a normal council
I don't know if we
meeting,
can do
no.
it then.
Oh, you wanna have a normal council meeting?
Well, I guess from a staff standpoint, I need to understand what I need to prepare to put this item on the agenda. Am I just presenting you guys with what Councilmember Crumick has put on there? Like, what kind of background is staff needing to do so we know how we can prepare? If you're really wanting to vote on this item, then we need to know, like, we need that time and we need to know what we need to prepare for.
Okay, then to be fair, I think the best way forward is the next meeting. It would be in sort of discussion
Okay,
of, and that will give us time to gather whatever information we gather.
maybe refine it some.
Sure.
Mhm.
And then from that meeting, the first meeting in May would be when it's on the agenda, right? For a vote.
Okay,
And then, what do you think? Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay. And at that point, we would vote on it, and if it passes, right, it's an if, we may not all agree right here, but if we agree to put some sort of incentive package like I'm proposing, the first meeting in May, it becomes effective, and at that point, the timeframe starts.
I'm a little confused.
yeah, we'll have to look at the rates and see, because I don't know if there has to be public hearing or anything, if we have to schedule that to adjust the rates.
I don't know either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so-
we'll have to do that homework,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not a bad idea, it's kind of vague though, I mean, we need more parameters.
No, it's not big. We cut the developer impact fees by 50% for a certain period of time.
Well, that's a little more.
So
exact,
that,
yeah.
well, it's written down here, and that's what I'm shooting for. We have it on paper, I've presented it, I want to get this thing to a vote.
The only thing I would say is let's not rush it. I mean, again, I think defining qualified, defining, how we handle, moving the fees
So
back,
I-
but it's all
I think-
doable.
So
but-
I think the proper procedure would be that next time we'll put it on as a discussion item, we'll do our research of what we would have to do if we have to do public hearings or anything, and advertise that.
Okay.
And then that way, after our discussions and we refine it, then we will know what process we need to move forward with. Is that fair?
Sure.
As presentation material from you folks, I would like to see what our current rates are for different, we've all heard about what we're kind of looking to do for some of the different projects. What do those fees look like in general terms? Maybe what do some of the surrounding areas have for the same fees, just for a reference?
Surrounding areas, fees, but with towns the same size.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go with that, but not with just in general, because it
Yeah.
changes.
Tammy, do you think this is something that we could reasonably get on the second meeting in May for like an actual agenda item? Do you think that's enough time?
For a vote?
I
Or a
think
vote?
I think it depends upon what our process is going to be.
Okay.
So I don't wanna, commit to that because I wanna confirm what the process is. Cause if we have to do public hearing and we have to advertise, then we have to advertise 10 days before the public hearing. There should still be enough time to do that, so.
All right. Well, I'm not gonna let this one go, so we gotta keep going on it, and I wanna get this to a vote.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilman Swift.
Yeah, no, I like the concept too. I just want to make sure that we don't pull something half-baked out of the oven and it doesn't work, because the concept makes a lot of sense. And Yeah, about the only other thing I'm glad you're talking about, the regulations, the state, and I think it was Bill Maher that made this little quip about politically, you know, California is a blue state, all tied up in red tape. So there's a little humor for the night, and that's all I have.
Vice Mayor.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, I'll just say in closing that I'll keep trying to figure out some ways to try to soften the pain on some of those out there. I don't have all the answers. I'm still struggling to find them. And if anybody's got an idea out there, hey, share it. But there's got to be a way. I mean, it just doesn't seem equitable. So if you have an idea, share it with me sometime, and I'll try to get it up here and try to do something with it. Thank everybody for their patience and your input. All those on the internet, good night.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Another day.
Hey,
Howdy. Supreme Court did to a
hey, Ed.
Yes.
little old lady back in New Jersey.
Thank you.
They wanted to take her property, the state of New Jersey wanted to take her property from her for a development.
Oops.
Fought it all the